start off. I'd like to start off the meeting today by welcoming Margaret to the panel. I've known you a long time, Margaret. I think you'll be a great panelist, and we're really looking forward to your service on the panel.
Thank you, Jay.
I'm going to start off with the roll call. I'm here, obviously. David Mintz.
I am here.
Okay, Linda Laird.
I'm here too.
Bob Walter.
He's going to run a little late.
Okay. Bruce McDonald. Bruce. I thought Bruce was supposed to be here. Ken Gill is not going to be here. He is celebrating his 85th birthday with a big party back in Phoenix. So he's been excused for that. Sandy Stillwell. Sandy?
Here.
Okay. Margaret, we've already seen. John
Yeah.
Jensen
Yep, here, Jay.
and Tony Lappy.
Here again.
And finally, Ann Brady.
Good morning.
Hi, Ann.
Hi.
Okay. The next point I want to make is public comment is always welcome at these meetings. Use the chat function to make a comment. As we move through each agenda item, Ken Gooderham will let me know if there is public comment to address before we move on to the next agenda item. Next, our normal practice is to begin each January meeting with the election of officers for the new year. I'm going to suggest we put that off until our presenters have finished so that we don't have to have them be tied up sitting through while we take care of that business. Next up, we need to approve the December panel minutes. Can I have a motion to approve?
I make a,
Well, go ahead, Dick. I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
No.
Minutes are approved. Okay, first on our agenda today was supposed to be Kevin Ruane. Kevin was called to a meeting with the governor. And as I understand it, he's going to try to call in around 10:15 today. So we're going to skip over that and wait for Kevin to call us in. Our next topic is debris removal. I understand that we've got Doug Whitehead and Amanda, not sure how to pronounce the last name.
Condamina.
Okay, sorry for that, Amanda.
No
Thank
worries.
you for being here. I think we're going to get an update on the status of debris removal, and I'm sure we'll have some questions for you after you give us an update. So
Jay,
please go ahead.
Jay,
Yes.
Jay, Bruce McDonald is here.
Okay.
And could you just adjust your screen just a bit because we can only see you from your nose up. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Actually, it's better if you just see me from my nose down.
No, put it back to your head. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Morning.
Continue on.
Okay, before I jump in, Doug, are you on?
I haven't seen him yet. Is he calling in or coming in as him on Zoom?
That I'm not quite sure. I can find out if you want to give me just 1 second.
Sure. I have two phone numbers. I don't know who they are.
we lose Jay?
I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Okay. If Doug is going to be running late, Amanda,
Yep.
we can move the agenda. I'll put you second rather than first, if that's better for you.
Nope, he's calling in right now, so I can go ahead and start it, and then
Okay.
Doug can pick up wherever I'm at when he hops on the call.
Okay.
So to date, we have consistently had between 2 to 3 double barrel collection vehicles out on Captiva doing collections. As of today, well, actually end of day yesterday, we've collected 157,000 cubic yards of material out in the Captiva area. And we recognize we still have about 16,000 cubic yards left to go. We are using our primary debris sites that is on Sanibel, which is in closest proximity to where your area of jurisdiction is. We're going to continue having trucks out there until all the debris is gone. And we just encourage anyone to keep putting it into the right of way, but not where it's going to impede the roadway.
Amanda, do you want to take a question or do you have?
Absolutely.
Is FEMA going to continue to support, this effort until it's completely done? I mean, the normal pattern here that I see is trucks come by, they pick up, debris. And then a week later, there's more debris back at the site where they previously picked up on as people continue to, get around to clearing their property. Some people were clearing their property within a few days after the hurricane. There are probably others that still haven't even really faced up to what's ahead of them yet. And so I guess my question is how much longer will the program go on?
We are taking it on really a day-to-day basis. We're assessing the amount of debris that's still at the curb. We're looking at the properties, determining what is still going to potentially come out to the right-of-way for us to collect under our debris mission. And we're committed to having trucks in there until the material is gone. Now,
Right.
if the debris is on private property, that's not something that we are able to collect under our debris mission. That would fall under the state. And we would encourage any residents in Captiva that have debris on their private property to apply for the state mission, because the state is there to assist with the debris removal from on property. But at this time, we don't have any anticipated end date just yet. We are assessing as we go.
Well, would you be making an announcement that say in 2 weeks, the service is going to stop? And if you've got debris to get up front, you got to have it up front by such and such a date.
When we get to that point, yes, we will do that. We've done that with some of our more eastern areas of the county. We established a set out deadline of January 3rd so that way we could assess resources and be able to do one last big sweep and call those finalized. So when we get to that point for Captiva, yes, we will also announce something like that. And I think Doug just hopped on the call. Doug, you want to jump in here?
And while he's jumping in, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I've been told on a number of occasions that Crowded Gulf has difficulty picking up debris of mixed piles. In other words, where they have a combination of vegetation and other kind of debris, either be white goods or just couches or, various other things. Will they be able to pick up mixed piles going forward, or is that going to be a problem for you?
They can pick up mixed piles. It just drastically slows down the collection process because they have to try and separate it out as much as they can to collect the appropriate material in its own sections, or its own groups rather. So they will collect it. It'll just slow it down.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Doug, did you want to jump in? I believe you're on mute.
I'll ask you one more question while he's on mute.
Sure, go for it.
landscapers traditionally on Captiva remove the debris, the vegetative debris as they do their landscaping. Currently, they're not doing that. They're putting it out to the curb because Crowder Gulf is picking up and you guys are picking up. That's I'm assuming that's a process that will continue until such time as we hear otherwise.
It is, we just have to be careful with the landscapers. If they are being paid by the property owner to dispose of that material, it then becomes commercial debris and the landscapers are supposed to take it away with them. So we would just caution the property owners to make sure that if their landscapers are putting it at the curb, that they're not paying extra for disposal.
Okay.
And we are running into a few areas of concern with land clearings. And unfortunately, land clearing altogether is not eligible for under FEMA for collection. So if you have residents that are, or they have hired a company to clear an entire lot, that we cannot take. Hi, Doug.
How you doing?
Doug, this is Jay Brown. I'm panel president. Amanda has given us an excellent update so far and has been fielding questions. We very, very much appreciate you taking time out of what I know must be an incredibly busy schedule to update us. So we appreciate your presence very much at the meeting. And if I think Amanda's done a really nice job fielding our questions, but if you have comments, we'd sure love to hear them.
I guess my main comment would be one of the most basic ones is that we need people to get material to the street so we can collect it. You know, we've estimated that there's probably about, a little bit less than 20,000 cubic yards remaining in Captiva that we can see. But the key thing is that we have to see it. So it really does need to get to curb. I know it's unsightly. I know that there's all sorts of issues with that, but we do have trucks out there, as Amanda pointed out, and we're collecting, but it has to be there so we can get it. And that's pretty much, or they've been out there working hard, and there's trucks out there pretty much every day when I look back in time. That's it.
Do you have do we have an issue on Captiva with people not getting debris out to the curb? Or was your comment just in general about debris pickup?
In general, because we wouldn't know. If it's not out, it's not out. We don't go doors saying, have you done anything yet? So but it's a general comment, which is really important because I'll give it as an example. Amanda pointed out the east portion of the county. We've told them we need to go out by a certain date, and we do see material coming out quite a bit. And we are getting complaints that, well, you've never been by my street before and things like that. So we really, the first step with all we do, residents and businesses getting material to the right of way for collection.
Right.
Doug, this is David Mintz. We have a very good relationship with Barrett Holmes, who from Crowder Gulf, and he's been very responsive to the requests that we have made. I think we can tell you that over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see an increasing amount of vegetative debris brought to the street as the landscapers are beginning to cut the trees and the vegetation down to try to get the properties back in shape. So I think even though it's slowed down for a while, I suspect in the next week or two, it's going to increase as the landscapers are now going into a second phase of cleaning up the properties. That's what we've been seeing on Captiva.
Urge people to do that. It's going to be really important to get that done, because at a certain point in time is that we'll have to transition to the normal waste hauler, which is Waste Pro.
Okay.
Does anybody have anything else on this topic? Ken, do we have any public comment or questions?
We do not.
Okay, well, Doug and Amanda, thanks so much for being here. We really, really appreciate you taking time out from your busy schedules for this important update for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And Ken has both mine and Doug's direct contact information. So if anyone on here has any questions going forward about the process, don't hesitate to reach out to either of us.
Okay, very good. Thank you again.
Thanks all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, our next agenda item is a presentation from Katie Sherrard, who is the chief engineer for Florida Department of Transportation. And she is the one that, as I understand it, is the principal engineer on redoing the causeway to Captiva. I sat in on a Sanibel City Council meeting about a month ago, where Katie made an excellent presentation updating the Sanibel City Council on the future plans for the causeway. And it was an excellent presentation, and I'm glad Katie has volunteered to update our Captiva community. It's so much appreciated. Katie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. Can everyone see the screen okay? I just want to make sure we're good to go. Awesome. Perfect. I see some head shaking. Great. So this is mostly, for the most part, the same presentation that was given at the Sanibel Commission meeting, or the City Council meeting in December. So I have a little bit of updates for you that we did not know at that point in time as it relates to kind of next steps, but I'll go through that when I get there.
Yeah, well, again, Katie, very few, people from Captiva had sat in on this meeting. So all of us, almost all of us will be seeing this information for the first time.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, great. All right, let's see if I can get it to switch slides now. Come on. And it doesn't want to do it. Okay, we're going to have to go this way. Can you still see the slides okay if I do it this? Can you see it okay?
I see it.
Okay. All right. So just to give everyone a kind of a perspective of what we were dealing with before Hurricane Ian compared to where we are now after the temporary improvements. So here is an aerial photo of the Sanibel Causeway prior to Hurricane Ian. And then here is one after the temporary roadway construction was complete. So you can see in a couple of areas, you can see this area here, if you can see my cursor on the screen, that's where there was the washout of the island where it had kind of severed the island there in half on Island B, and then a larger sever there on Island A. So this is where we are for the most part today with the temporary roadway access. So a lot of questions that we've been getting, whether it be through community forums on social media or requests from the media or just phone calls from the public. What repairs are going to be made to the causeway? What will the causeway look like when the repairs are complete? Will the public have access to the causeway islands? And what's being done to make the causeway more resilient? And so unfortunately, I don't have exact answers for you yet. This is a very fluid situation, and we continue to adjust as we move forward in our design for the permanent repairs, and as we continue our coordination with the local communities, Lee County, and our permitting agencies. But we do have relatively clear direction on the path that we're headed, and hopefully I'll be able to give you that type of information today. So one of the things that we are looking at doing is putting back a design that is more resilient. So in the past, anytime that there was an emergency situation and we were eligible for funding for reimbursement of repairs related to hurricane type events, we were required to put back what was there before. Okay, well, in this case, that makes it a little difficult, right? We don't want to put back exactly what was there before. We knew that it failed, it severed access from the mainland to the island. And so we want to put back infrastructure that's more resilient than what was there prior to Hurricane Ian. That being said, there are some new laws in place and some opportunities to get funding partnerships to help us do those added resiliency measures. And so that's the direction or the path that we're kind of headed at this point in time. So what did we know from Hurricane Ian? We know that the surge was approximately 12 feet It did vary depending on where you were at, exactly if you were closer to Fort Myers Beach or, closer or further up north on Sanibel Captiva. But approximately here in the area of the toll booth, the surge was approximately 12 feet. The wave action on top of that surge was 8 feet. So to kind of put it into perspective for you, you all are very familiar, obviously, with the toll plaza that's here. And they had to remove about 18 to 24 inches of the drywall in the upstairs offices because there was standing water. So that gives you an idea of how high that water was and the wave action that was then entering there through the windows and under the door. Hurricane Ian did exceed the design storm event. And so a design storm event, for those of you who are not familiar, it's the data that we use to establish our minimum design criteria. And pre-Hurricane Ian, the causeway design from when it was designed back in and in the early 2000s and built in just before, I guess, completed just before 2010-ish timeframe. The existing bulkheads or the seawalls are at elevation 3 to 5 feet. They vary depending on the location throughout the causeway. And then the elevation of the causeway roadway itself was approximately at 7 feet. So some of the design considerations for added resiliency that we're looking into. One of them is on the causeway portion itself with the roadway. We're looking at adding buried sheet pile walls along the shoulders. They'll protect the sides of the roadway with mattresses, which are essentially buried baskets filled with rocks. So those are kind of these gray areas here. We're also looking at potentially protecting the ocean side with additional riprap, very similar to the T-groins that were installed within the last couple of years. And we're also considering raising the roadway of the roadway on the islands themselves by approximately 2 feet. So again, these are all considerations. These are not things that we are absolutely moving forward at this time. They're part of the evaluation and part of that discussion that's going on with the local communities as well as the permitting agencies in Lee County to make that final determination. And for those of you who you may be wondering, this buried sheet pile wall here that you see with these mattresses or these buried baskets filled with rock, what that will do is that will serve the purpose of protecting the roadway so that way it doesn't have the washout that made those major cuts through the island. So that kind of holds the roadway in place in an event similar to like Hurricane Ian.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Bruce McDonald, is it all right if I ask a question?
Sure, yes, please
Go ahead,
do.
Bruce.
Yeah, so as you guys are, as you're thinking about what you're going to do here, do you have a like I think you said on the previous slide, we had the existing causeway had a set of parameters that it was designed to. Yeah, the design storm event. Are you, as you sort of think this through, are you going to change or make that design storm event a bigger number, and therefore because of that drive the new design, or are you just looking to leave the existing design storm event but have it like more sturdy if the water washes over the causeway? Because the reason I asked that is because if we had a 12-foot storm surge and the causeway is 7 feet high and we raised the road 2 feet to 9 feet, doesn't seem to work really.
Sure, that's a really great question. So the data that we've collected from Hurricane Ian, that will now become our new design storm event criteria. Okay, so that kind of establishes a new baseline or minimum criteria for us. That being said, we realistically cannot build a causeway roadway without building a bridge, which I'll get into later on in some of the alternatives that we're considering, to withstand or to I guess, be higher than a surge of 12 feet. So that's where comes in the added resiliency measures, such as these buried sheet pile walls at the shoulders.
Okay.
What you're looking at here is essentially two different things. On top of looking at your new design storm event, criteria, we're also taking into consideration sea level rise and what that predicted sea level rise will be in the future. That's where the 2 feet comes in to raise the roadway bed. So your 2 feet is addressing your sea level rise, while your buried sheet pile walls and the baskets along the shoulders, which are buried underground, that will protect the surge and the force of the current with that surge going through the causeway area. So it's really a combination of both design criteria and added resiliency design consideration.
So you're basically, this one doing a design that in the event the surge is that high, the integrity of the causeway wouldn't be breached.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, another question. What is a sheet pile wall?
Okay, the sheet pile wall, I don't know, can you see my cursor when I'm pointing on the screen
Yes.
here? Okay, perfect. All right, so sheet pile walls, they are essentially steel sheets, very long sheets. They come in different lengths. They range everything from 30 to 45 to 60 foot in length. And depending on the location in which they're needed to be installed, that dictates the length of the pile that we need. If you're back in the area now, I know some people still aren't here. If you're back in the area now, you'll see us currently installing sheet pile walls along the outside of the seawalls now. So you'll see the cranes lifting these giant long sheets of steel essentially in the air and then vibrating those down into the ground. And those are steel sheet pile walls. They interlock essentially and they create a wall. The idea here is that they'll either be buried underground and you won't see them, or if they're going to be exposed, so above the water elevation or along the edge of the roadway as you're going up to approach the bridges, they will have an aesthetic treatment on the outside of them in the permanent condition so that they look very similar to the walls that were there prior to the storm, except for they're much more stable and more resilient than what was there prior.
Okay,
So
thank you.
You're welcome. In the temporary condition, you'll see the steel sheet pile walls. In the permanent condition, there'll be an aesthetic treatment over those walls.
Okay.
All right. So then let's talk. Yep, go ahead.
One other question. Will this also, will this same thing be done on the roadway leading up to the causeway that washed out?
That is actually this next slide that I'm getting ready to show you here. So those areas are known as the bridge approaches. So Hurricane Ian, actually, these structures themselves, the 3 bridges held up very, very well. We've had multiple inspections done on those structures, both aerial inspections, visual inspections, and underwater dives, checking the integrity of those structures, and they're all in really great condition. The areas that we had issues with after the storm or because of the storm were mostly in the areas of the bridge approaches. So the elevated areas of roadway as you're kind of rising up to meet with the bridge structures themselves. So that's kind of what you see here on the screen. So imagine you're standing at the bridge and you're looking down the roadway and you cut the road in half and now you're looking into the road, right? That's kind of what you see here. You're looking into the roadway, and these areas here, these light gray that are on the screen, those are the areas that were what we call MSE wall. It stands for mechanically stabilized earth, but essentially they're concrete panels that have straps on them that are buried underground, and that holds in the roadway embankment there, the soils that the road is built on. What happened in the storm is that the material, because of the velocities of the water coming through the area and the currents, the material washed out from underneath these areas in places. And when it did, those panels almost were like a domino effect. Okay, so they started to, as they're interlocking, they started to kind of collapse there. And once they collapsed and those straps that are holding everything back no longer has material on top of it to add that weight to hold back those straps, that's when those walls failed. And that's when that washout occurred. So we had washouts at 5 locations. So we have 6 approaches total, and we had failures at 5 of the 6. The only one that we did not have a failure was at the approach on Sanibel itself as you're coming back in the eastward direction, going on to Bridge C. So what we're looking at doing here is, again, installing sheet pile walls, which now you see are much deeper here and much more resilient. And then they'll be placed on the outside of the MSE walls that were there. And then we'll be backfilling and compacting all of this material to ensure that there are no voids and that the roadway is stable. We'll also be looking to install sheet pile walls on the outside of the existing seawalls. So this gray line here was the existing seawall. You can see from a slide where I had said before, this is at elevation approximately 5. We're looking to raise the new elevation to 8. And that accounts for the new minimum design criteria because of the Hurricane Ian design event or storm event. So that kind of gives you an idea here as you're approaching. It will look very similar to what you had prior to the storm. It will just be kind of a little bit of a larger footprint, and what will be behind the scenes and underground and behind the concrete fascia will be a much more resilient structure. Questions?
Question, is it just stronger, or is it really resilient in that it can come back easier?
Well, what the sheet pile does is it prevents the washing away of the material. So you can see they're much deeper that go into the ground here, and it's more of a solid structure. Think of more of a solid wall instead of, say, 4x4 panels that are locked together like dominoes. Right? Or like,
Do you expect the water to be able to wash over easier with this kind of design?
the water will wash over. If we were to get a storm event, it'll wash over in many areas if the surge is 12 feet, again, or anywhere near that. But what this will do is it will protect the roadway material from being undermined and then washed out from under these walls and then causing those collapses.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on this before I move on?
Yeah, I just have one quick question, just sort of a layman's question. Is the design and engineering consistent with able to withstand the exact event we had with Hurricane Ian without losing the bridge? Or is that something that you're not designing for?
Well, again, that event established our new design criteria. So that is what we are designing for. The likelihood that the exact same event in the exact same location in the exact same storm surge, right, that would happen, it's somewhere we call it, it can be a 1 in a 500-year storm event or a 100-year storm event. That refers to the general likeliness that will happen again, right? So I believe it was, and I'm not a drainage engineer by any means, but I believe it exceeded. The Hurricane Ian was somewhere in the range between our 100-year storm event and our 500-year storm event. So the likelihood that would happen again is somewhere, in the next, I don't know, say average 250 years likeliness. That being said, we are designing to be able to accommodate those type of impacts and that type of surge and wave action and current within this area.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so still kind of on this slide, just some additional information for you. I had pointed it out on the slide before. Looking to raise the seawalls to an average elevation of 8 feet from 5. Again, providing those steel sheet pile walls, and then heavy riprap protection along the seawalls here. So what we call riprap are essentially the large boulders that you see. Many of the rock that we had in the area was limestone boulders. They were not large enough to withstand the currents and the wave action and those surges that came through the area. And so the Hurricane Ian moved much of that material to different locations. And so we are looking to reuse that material where we can. to provide additional support, but in the final configuration, we will need much larger protection, much heavier riprap along the seawalls to hold those in place. And then one of the final design considerations that we're looking at is not just the gray infrastructure, but really taking a look at the green infrastructure. We have found just from, looking at the island itself, both in the area of McGregor, as well as over on Sanibel and Captiva, and that in many of the areas where we did have the natural native resilient plantings, such as mangroves, those areas held up significantly better than areas that did not have Florida natural type plantings there or anything at all. And so what we're really looking to do is in the permanent configuration, when we are done with all of the construction at the end of the day, we're looking to put the causeway back in a very similar configuration as to what you're used to seeing prior to the storm. However, we're looking to add additional green infrastructure where feasible. And so that means additional mangrove plantings in areas to try and both visibly shield some of the areas of the gray infrastructure, the added, concrete type measures that we need to implement in order to make it more resilient, but also to provide a more resiliency for the shorelines and the beaches themselves. So that is something that we're looking at doing, and we're working with our permit agencies to ensure that we're doing it appropriately. So looking at the alternatives analysis, some of the things that we have considered or finalizing the consideration of, we are always required to consider a no-build alternative. I think we all here know that the no-build alternative really isn't the preferred option here, right? We had to put back a roadway and to provide access to the island, but we will analyze that and document, if we were to have a no-build, what would that look like? So that is always on there when we're doing our studies. The other is reconstruction per the original design. So I kind of touched on that a little bit, and the previous design no longer meets the 100-year storm event. The Hurricane Ian criteria will become our 100-year storm event, and we'll be looking to analyze both what if we only built back what was here versus what if we designed to the new 100-year storm event criteria. We've also kind of taken a very high level analysis look at constructing the bridges over the remains of the vulnerable causeway sections. Unfortunately, this is not cost effective for the budget that's available, and it would greatly exceed schedule expectations. We are really focused on trying to get this project done within a year's time frame and be out of here by the end of 2023. And constructing new bridges all the way across would not be feasible. We do believe it would also be an excessive design. We do believe that based on the new design criteria, as well as the design resiliency measures that we'd be looking to implement, that a bridge across the entire way from mainland to Sanibel would be excessive and isn't needed to address the concerns. We are looking at, as an alternative, improving the armoring along the causeway and the bridgeway approaches. These are really all of the resiliency measures that I had just previously spoke of, but they may be insufficient as a long-term solution if we were to only do that in the areas where we had the washout. So that's why I want to clear up that statement there. So it may be inefficient as a long-term solution if we only implemented those measures in the areas where we had the washout. The reason I say that is what we are moving forward with our proposal and our 30% plans, which I'll discuss on the next slide here, which are essentially our concept level plans, is that we're looking at not only doing the resiliency measures in the areas of the washouts and the failures, but really along the entire causeway themselves. So in front of all of the existing seawalls, in front of all of the previous MSE walls, and that additional armoring of the roadway sections along the entire portions of the roadway, not just the area that washed out. And then reconstruction with sheet pile walls placed outside of the existing seawalls. I had touched on this earlier. That is the new seawalls that will be at approximately elevation 8. So these are all of the things that we're documenting in our alternatives analysis that we have to show to the permitting agencies and to the federal agencies that will be seeking reimbursement from in support of coordination with Lee County this is all of the analysis that will be done and documented. So what are the next steps? So right now, what you see the work going on right now is we are completing installation of the sheet pile walls for additional armoring of the temporary roadway. We are placing these sheet pile walls in the permanent locations. Okay, so I think that's important to note here is that although they are considered temporary installations, they are considered temporary because right now you will just see the steel sheet piles sticking out of the ground. Those, we have 25 locations, wall locations total. Those are 15 locations. Those 15 locations will provide that additional support in the event that we have another major storm event before the permanent repairs are completed. Those walls are being placed in the areas where we had the washouts and where we have currently the sloped embankments that are holding up the temporary roadway. So we are getting those in, and our goal is to get all of that in prior to hurricane season this year. We are looking at wrapping up our alternatives analysis that will be done here within the first quarter of 2023. We are currently working on our 30% level plans, which are essentially concept plans. I have early 2023, but we're hoping those will be complete by the end of this month. That will outline essentially the footprint. If you're looking down at the island from the top, say, an aerial view, it will show you where we are planning on putting the new seawalls, where we are planning on putting the new walls that protect the areas of roadway that are not in the water. So that is what we're working towards completion of here within the next month or so. We then will meet with our local agencies and our permit agencies. This is an ongoing process, really. We meet with them every 2 weeks to discuss our progress on the project in the direction in which we're headed, to make sure that everyone continues to be on board in the direction that we're heading, and that the decisions that we are making are joint coordinated decisions. And then we'll be looking to finalize our design and apply for permits by the end of first quarter of this year. It typically takes, I will tell you, on a standard project, it typically takes about a year to get your permit to begin construction. We are on a very expedited process with this project, and we have wonderful, wonderful participation and coordination from all of the agencies so far. That is why we continue to do biweekly meetings with them, and they have all been very supportive at looking to get expedited reviews and issuance of permits. So our goal then is to be able to begin the repairs within 6 months. So by the summer of 2023, which would cut the entire permitting process in half in the timeline. That is the goal. And so far, I believe that everyone is focused on that goal, and we are working towards that. And then our goal for completion of the permanent repairs would be late 2023 of this year. So with that, that concludes my update and the presentation I have for you today, but I'll be happy to take any additional questions that you may have.
Katie, there were
Katie,
two.
that's, yeah, excellent presentation. Do we have questions from the public?
Yes, there were two, actually one comment, one question. The comment was suggesting that you use a before and after images to show what you're planning to do on the causeway. It may be a little bit better for people to get the perspective. The question was, if beach parking along the causeway is to be reinstated, has consideration been given in the design planning being discussed as to structure, et cetera?
Sure, great. I'll be happy to answer those. So I'll start with the one, the before and after. So what we are working on right now as part of the alternatives analysis, we are working on the associated costs that go with those, and then the pros and cons of implementing each of those measures. Once we complete that, we will be working with the county. Lee County actually has jurisdiction over this roadway. And we will be meeting with them to discuss which resiliency measures they would like to move forward with. Once we know that and we have an answer on that, that will help us finalize our 30% concept plan. Once we finalize that, we will be putting together visual graphics for the public, as well as starting up a public website where the public can go to ask questions and get information that will make it very easy to see the locations in which we'll be implementing these improvements, as well as visuals of before and afters to help understand what will be constructed. And then to answer the second question about the beach parking along the causeway. So we are aware of what was there prior to Hurricane Ian. We have also been coordinating with Lee County and their Parks and Recs department on improvements that they actually had planned for those areas prior to Hurricane Ian. And we are looking to at least accommodate those designs in our design and reconstruction of the islands. The reason that I say accommodate is because the conversations with Lee County and with other agencies related to funding participation is ongoing. And so the Federal Highway Administration does not always reimburse for those type of the reconstruction of those type of facilities, right? Parks and that type of facility. But FEMA may. And so what we are looking to do is to decide, okay, what is it that needs to be done? And then how can Lee County go about getting the funding to be able to pay for that so that we as the Department of Transportation in the state of Florida can support them in managing the reconstruction of this causeway. So I think I said it early on in the presentation, it's a very fluid situation. We continue to work through this on a daily basis. Our ultimate goal is to try and put back what you had there before in a more resilient way. We maintain that as our focus, and we are doing whatever we can to be able to get back to that point. At the end of the day, funding has to be available to be able to do it. But whatever decisions that we're making along the way, we're making those decisions so that we do not exclude the possibility to be able to put back what was there.
And one other question just came in. Is all the work now just temporary since there have been no permits?
So two things. Yes, it is considered temporary, but we are placing the work, the in-water work, the sheet piles that we're driving now with the cranes, that is all in the permanent location. So we will not be reconstructing that per se when we go into the permanent construction and the permanent configuration. We have also all of the roadway work that we have done to date for the temporary roadway. We have done so in a way that we are looking to reuse that to the maximum extent possible. So for those of you who have been visiting the island, you may have seen at times that we have lane closures, and unfortunately those do impact some of the traffic flow because we have to get soil data within the roadway itself, and we have to go down to one lane of traffic. What we are gathering with that data is we are ensuring that the roadway that we have built as a temporary does not have any voids underneath, that the soil is adequately compacted, and we are getting soil samples from underneath the roadway and deep into the ground so that we know that whatever we build back in the permanent configuration is what needs to be there. So short story is, yes, it's considered temporary. We are looking to reuse that material and everything that we've built to the maximum extent possible. I do want to touch on the permit comment because we do have permits. We have worked with our permit agencies. We are operating under an emergency permit. We had one emergency permit to build the roadway itself, and that permit carried us through essentially what was built to get the roadway open there through, I guess it was that October 19th date to get that roadway open. And then we have also received a second emergency permit through the permitting agencies and the Army Corps of Engineers to begin installation of the sheet pile walls and things that you see, the work that's essentially going on now. That permit will carry us through until our final plans and permanent repairs are well documented and submitted to the permit agencies to get that permanent permit for that construction.
Katie, can I just ask one financial, or really two financial questions? You mentioned cost before. Do you have a ballpark figure of what it's going to cost to rebuild this bridge and make it resilient as you've described here today? That's the first question. The second question is, you talked about the excessive costs for building a bridge across the whole expanse. Is there a number that you can give us that's associated with that kind of bridge building if we went that route, which we obviously can't at this point, but I'd just be curious what that number is.
Sure, that's a great question, and that's a question actually on a lot of people's minds, and we get that a lot. And as much as I would love to be able to answer that question for you today, we're just not there yet. And that goes into kind of wrapping up our alternatives analysis and documenting all of the options and what they're going to cost. And then we'll have a much clearer idea of what the total cost of the repairs are going to be. I will tell you our initial estimates are somewhere in the $100 million range. It may be less, it may be more. We just really do not know yet. Within the next couple of months, I will have a much clearer idea of what those costs are going to be, and I will be happy to come back at a future meeting if you'd like and provide an update for you on the total of what it costs to do all of those emergency repairs, and then as well as what we project and what our budget will be to move forward with the permanent repairs.
Hey, Katie J. Brown again. Do you expect any shutdowns of the causeway during this entire period between now and the time that we complete construction of the new causeway? Will there be a period of time where the island will be inaccessible?
No, sir. At this point in time, we do not intend to restrict access. Well, I should say to shut down the causeway that would prevent access from the island. There will be times that we have somewhat restricted access in that we have to do a flagging operation and flag the eastbound and westbound directions of traffic through one lane. And that's just during construction activities where we need to work either on the roadway or very close to the roadway. But we do not intend at this point in time to prevent access to the island from now through the time that construction is complete.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have questions for Katie? Well, Katie, that was an outstanding presentation. Really appreciate it. You know, thanks so much for taking time out to give us this update. When would be a good time for you to come back to us with an update presentation? What would be a logical milestone point for you, do you think?
I would say probably very late February or early March. You know, I feel more comfortable. I don't know how often that you all meet. You know, maybe
We meet
your
on a
first meeting
monthly
in March.
basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe if you have one in early March, that'll give us 2 months to really get the final plan or the permanent direction a little more solidified. And I think I'll be able to give you a pretty solid update at that point in time.
Good. Well, let's plan on that. We will be meeting on the second Tuesday of March.
Okay.
It would be great if you could give us an update at that meeting.
I will be more than happy to do that. And as the time gets closer, if it doesn't look like we're quite where we need to be to really be of great benefit to you, I'll reach out. And if we need to push it 1 month, perhaps we can. But I'm pretty comfortable that we can be where we need to be in March. Okay.
Right. We're very flexible, Katie. It's just whenever you think, you know, you've got some milestones done and you have significant new information, we'll plan on March, but if you think April, you know, as you get further into it would be better, that would be fine also.
Okay. We'll go for March for now.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for having me.
Really
My pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Okay, next up, Sheriff's Office update. Is Mike Sawicki around? Hello, Mike.
Hey, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Okay. Can you give us a briefing on what's going on? And
as you may have noticed, the causeway is now open.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's bringing a fair amount of traffic out to the island. It hasn't really been too bad. I mean, people have been coming up, driving onto the island. There's a few businesses open, but not very many. So there's not a lot of parking available for the public. So we're finding a lot of people just coming in, checking out the island and turning around and leaving. I just want to reiterate what I had said in that email that went out. If you're able to, you know, when you look at your property, if it seems like a place that's in any way appealing for somebody to just stop their car and cut across to the beach, you may just want to put up some signs or some tape or a chain across your driveway or something like that. With the lack of public parking, people have really gotten creative about access to the beach and where they're able to park. So just in order to keep the honest people honest, we just want to make sure it's pretty plain which properties are open for people to use and which ones are closed to public use.
Right. Okay. Has there been any increase in criminal activity, anything like that since the causeway opened?
No, I would say really what we're looking at, it's not like we have a sudden increase in master criminals coming out here. I think what you have is just a lot more members of the general public. And as always, I mean, that's an array of different people. I mean, we got some kids parking at the end of the road, having a couple of drinks and probably smoking some marijuana and stuff. But other than that, I mean, we haven't had really any property crimes, any increase in property crimes or anything. It's mostly just about managing the flow of traffic as people are coming out here and exploring the island and getting their look at the damage.
Right, so it's just mostly like looky-loos that are coming out and.
Yeah, that seems to be what it is. And we do have a lot of people that we've encountered quite a few people that have come out here and been surprised that they're unable to access the beach, despite the numerous signs and media and, things on the park's websites. We have a lot of inquiries about how to get to the beach. We've just been telling people, as far as we know, the only place that's open with beach access is Tween Waters Inn, and they can contact them about getting a day pass. But really, other than that, there really isn't any public access to the beach right now.
Right. All beaches continue to be closed, right?
Well, the beach itself would be open if people have access to it. The problem for the general public coming out here is the public access is Turner Beach Park, Andy Rossi Beach accesses, which is owned by the county parks, and Allison Hagerup Park remain closed. So if you have a friend coming from town and you allow them to use your property to access the beach, it's not like we're telling people they can't be on the beach. It's more just a matter of which accesses they're allowed to use.
Right, so there is all the public accesses continues to be closed.
Yes.
Right. Okay, anything else, Mike?
Nope, I think that's it. Just a reminder to check your security systems and make sure that your properties, again, a lot of the areas are more exposed than they used to be. And when people are driving around and looking for that parking space, if they can see a little glint of water, they're probably going to park there and use that as their way to walk through. I would just make sure people understand what's public and what's private.
Okay. Any questions for Mike from panelists or from our audience? Okay, well, Mike, thanks for the report, and always appreciate the updates you give us at these meetings. Thanks so much.
Of course, it's my pleasure. All right.
Okay, next on the agenda was Chief Jeff Powell. Jeff called me yesterday and said he was going to be unable to attend our meeting today due to a funeral that he had to attend. So he will not be with us. The only thing he wanted me to mention is that property tax receipts are coming in much slower than what they've come in historically. That people aren't paying their property taxes as quickly as they normally do, and he's just wondering if anybody has any ideas as to why that might be. I've suggested to him that
I know why that is, Jay.
Okay.
I'll give a report with the legislation report. There's been executive orders and new legislation with respect to how property taxes and when property taxes have to be paid. So I'll give a report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, that will cover that one. Okay, let's move on to Bob Walter to give us an update at South Seas. Bob.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Not much to update. The holidays, we slowed down out here a little bit. We're still in restoration mode and debris cleanup. But most of the HOAs are already past remediation, and they're putting back units and starting roof work already and everything else. So we're just like everybody else in Captiva right now, head down and trying to put everything back together.
Right. What is South Seas doing in regards to people renting their properties?
We're not renting anything right now in our systems.
Okay. So people that own rental properties on South Seas are just shut down from renting, or I guess if they're doing it, they're just doing it on their own.
If they're, yeah, correct. If they're doing it on their own, but I don't know of anybody out here doing it. There's just absolutely nothing to do, right?
Right.
And I'm hearing that most of the HOAs and are June 1 at best, getting units back, and then so it's going to be the latter part of 2023 before we start renting units again out here.
Okay. Do you know when South Seas will be? I don't know. Is reopening the right word or?
What we said before is late Q1 or probably mid Q2. We're going to try to open up the main marina for transient business, open up the North Pool area, which is in pretty good condition, and then have the Point restaurant open on the North Pool, probably more like the June 1 target. And then beyond that, no, we don't know yet.
Okay.
Bob, there is a question from the audience. Where is all the construction debris from the employee housing going?
Where's it going?
Yes.
It's already gone. I understand.
That's the proper, it's gone. That's correct. That's the right answer, I think. It's no longer on the island.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions for Bob? Okay, let's move on to our CEPD update from Daniel Munt. Daniel, are you around?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Dan. How are you doing?
Doing good. How are you doing, Jay?
Very good. Thank you. Have at it.
All right, just a few items for me this morning. First item that I'd like to announce is that Linda Laird has been reappointed to the board as commissioner yesterday. So just a quick congratulations to her, and we thank her for her service to the board.
Well, that's good news.
Yes, so we're full again. The next item of note is that Aptum made its preliminary presentation of the vulnerability analysis and phase 2 presentation yesterday. The video of yesterday's meeting, which contains these presentations, has already been uploaded and placed on our website. It's available to anyone who wishes to view it. The CEPD is going to follow up with public workshops to continue to refine these deliverables, and the dates to those are still to be announced. And the last item that I wanted to take a minute to speak about is the beach nourishment assessments. The CEPD's process all checks that have been received prior to the cutoff date for the tax collector and submitted to the amendment for the tax bill to each of those properties. And as the tax collector processes these amendments, they'll then generate an amended bill and allow an additional 30 days to take advantage of the early payment discount rate that's offered by the tax collector. The tax collector is going to be issuing refunds to any property owners that happen to paid both the tax collector's office and the CEPD office for the renourishment assessment. And
Dan, I've already received my refunds. That was very quick.
They're moving pretty quick, and I definitely, thank them for their work on these amendments as well. It's definitely been it's been a process, so I'm glad to be moving beyond it. And any checks that the CEPD office received after the cutoff date are going to be returned to the property owner. And if the property owner does wish to pay off the assessments, say next year, they can always reach out to our office and request the payoff differential, and we can process that as requested. And barring any questions, that's it for my update this morning.
Okay, Dan, where are we on replacing lost sand due to the hurricane? What's the overall, plan on that?
Currently, our office is investigating funding. We have applications both in review from FEMA and the Army Corps. And as the Army Corps and FEMA process our applications, we'll know the funding route. I'll probably anticipate it may be close to a year before another renourishment project.
Okay, did we lose about a third of the sand? Am I remembering that correctly?
We lost, including up to the depth of closure, which is about 13 feet or so underwater. We lost approximately 500,000 cubic yards of sand, which is still less than what we placed on the beach during the last nourishment, but we definitely are working to get that sand replaced as quickly as we can.
Did we ever, it's Bruce McDonald here, did we ever, I seem to recall a few months ago, we had, you guys had someone, I think it might have been Aptum, but I'm not sure, doing a survey of the beach in terms of like how much sand we lost and where we lost it. And I guess in some places there's more sand than it was before. Is that study been completed?
It's not been completed. Nicole gave a preliminary update also during our meeting yesterday. We requested her presentation for that, and I can place that on our website, but the video of her presentation is also included within the Aptum portion of our meeting from yesterday.
Okay. Yeah, maybe when we finished, it'd be a good agenda item for one of our meetings.
Certainly.
So Nicole's not able to talk today? I thought she was coming today.
No, Nicole had other engagements this morning.
Okay. I thought she's coming at 11. All right.
If she is, it would be news to me. I don't know if you've had outside conversations with her.
Okay. Thank you.
Bruce, she did lay out where the sand was lost, how much of the sand is lost, and what the various agencies' opinion is with respect to how much should be replaced, and that is outlined in her presentation to CEPD, and at some point we can do that here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be of great interest to a lot of the panel members to understand that better. Are we looking at, I'm totally ignorant on this, Daniel, but are we looking at a renourishment project that would be similar to what we just completed, or would it be something much smaller? Can you describe it at all?
I would assume with roughly 500,000 cubic yards, it would probably be island wide as well. I can't conclude that fully, but that would be my expectation.
That is the goal, though, Joe. The goal is to bring the beach back to where it was after the nourishment on FEMA.
There's issues with what view they take of the sand losses. And so we're working with the lobbyist and others to try to get the view that we lost 500. It depends how you look at it on total volume loss versus beach profile. So Aptum's on top of it, the CEPD's on top of it. We're working to do the 500 cubic yards. There's also some issues with respect to blind pass in the county. The county is not crazy. The county's concerned that what we do will may fill in blind pass since they're responsible for it. So the CEPD and Aptum will coordinate with the county to come up with plans that hopefully keep everybody happy.
Yeah, I think what I learned from Bruce, what I learned from the meeting yesterday that is of concern is that a lot of the sand that was on the dry beach, the dunes, the dune plantings where it protects our island, a lot of that sand seems to have washed into the water, but close to the water line. And so some agencies are saying we really didn't lose that much sand because it's right below the water line. But the problem, sand, which is right below the water line, to come back up and create dunes and protect our island could take years. So what they're trying to do is get enough sand so they can build out the dunes and the sea oats, et cetera, so that we're protected. But there seems to be some issues about whether or not we can get that sand to do it, because a lot of the sand we lost is now right below the water line, and some agencies think that we still have that sand, but it's not where we need it, which is at the dunes, and that's the issue that's being dealt with at this point by Aptum and CEPD, as I understand it.
That's
That is
helpful.
correct.
Okay, anything else for CEPD? Okay, let's move on to additional updates regarding recovery efforts. David, I think that's yours.
Yeah. The
And I
governor,
think you're also going to explain the tax reduction legislation that's
Yeah, I'll do that.
in process. Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
the governor signed 3 pieces of hurricane-related legislation. One is called disaster recovery, and that's Senate Bill 4A. The other is on insurance, which is Senate Bill 2A, and one is on toll relief, which is Senate Bill 6A. I'm going to start with disaster recovery, which is Senate Bill 4A. These are all signed into law. They are existing law. The legislation extends the due dates for property taxes due in 2022 for properties that were destroyed or rendered uninhabitable by Hurricane Ian or Nicole. So according to the executive order of the governor, if your property is completely destroyed or otherwise rendered uninhabitable, or your property taxes are not due until May 31st of 2023, that's when they have to be paid. Otherwise, you're delinquent as of June 1st. Taxes paid in November, December, or January will still receive the 4% discount. So if you haven't paid your taxes and you want to pay your taxes and your house was uninhabitable, you have until the end of January and you still get the 4% discount. If you pay in February, you get a 3% discount. In March, you get a 2% discount. In April, you'll get a 1% discount. No discounts will be offered during May. So if your house was uninhabitable, then you don't have to pay your taxes and you still get the full discount. And you don't have to pay until the end of January. Okay. Taxes, if you don't fall under the executive order, in other words, if your house was not uninhabitable, your taxes have to be paid in November or December to receive a 4% discount. If you pay in January, you'll only get a 2% discount, February 1%, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that's the first piece of this. The second piece of this is tax refunds. So this legislation authorizes property tax refunds in 2022, that is for 2022, for residential properties that were made uninhabitable for at least 30 days by either hurricane. Okay, if your house was uninhabitable for 30 days by either hurricane, in our case, Ian, you can get a property tax refund for 2022. It includes both homesteaded and non-homesteaded properties. Okay, the refund is based on the portion of the year the structure on the property was uninhabitable. That is, you take the number of days it was uninhabitable and divide by 365. Again, it's the structure of the property, not the land, and I'll get to that in a second. Uninhabitable, according to the legislation, means loss of use and occupancy of a residential structure, the building, for the purpose for which it was constructed, resulting from damage to or destruction of the residential structure caused by the hurricane. So if your structure was damaged as a result of the hurricane, that's uninhabitable. I tried to find out whether having no water and no electricity constitutes uninhabitable. It seems to me it should. And so I would say one should apply for the discount. There's no guarantee you'll get it. But if you can produce a bill showing there was no utilities, no water, no electric, I would argue that's uninhabitable. But the property must have been uninhabitable for 30 days. If it was less than 30 days, you're not entitled to any tax refund. Also, to get the tax refund, you would have had to pay your full property tax first. So you got to pay your full property tax, and then you submit a refund application. Okay, that refund application has to be submitted between January 1st of 2023 and April 3rd of 2023. You have to get a refund application, which got to be submitted to the property appraiser. The application is the Department of Revenue Form DR-5001. You can go on LIPA, Lee County Property Appraisers, and you can get a copy of that form. It's DR-5001. You have to fill out that form, list the number of days your property was uninhabitable. You have to sign a perjury statement attesting to it, and you must provide supporting documentation, which can be utility bills, insurance information, contractor statements, building permit applications, etc. Okay? For Hurricane Ian, the maximum number of days that you can get a tax refund for is 95 days. Okay, it's only for 2022. The maximum number of days is 95 days. The property appraiser will make a determination by June 1st, 2023. Let me just say this for Captiva residents. There's less of a refund here than meets the eye, because you're not taking the days that the property was uninhabitable and dividing it by 365. So if you get, say, 3 months by 365, it's like you're thinking you're going to get it, your taxes reduced by a quarter, but you're not, because it's only on the structure, not on the land. It's just like the 50% rule. It's only on the structure. So to put it, I guess, in a way that's understandable, if you have approximately $11,000 in property taxes on Captiva, I did the numbers. If you have approximately $11,000 of taxes on Captiva, property taxes, and your property is, your value is primarily land as opposed to house, you would get a refund of approximately $200 for the 3 months. So for some people, $200 or $300, even $400 is significant, but you're not getting, because it's only based on the structure, not the land, it's much less than you would think. This legislation also appropriates $150 million to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation for local governments to assist with the repair or replacement of housing, relocation costs, housing reentry, and insurance deductibles. So there's $150 million that can assist people with insurance deductibles. We may need somebody that's an issue for. And then there's $251.5 million to the DEP to fund beach erosion and water infrastructure projects. So there's $250 million that can go to various counties, municipalities for beach erosion and water infrastructure. The beach erosion piece is $100 million. So that's where some of the money to rebuild the Captiva beaches is going to come from that $100 million. So that's the first piece of legislation. The second piece of legislation is Senate Bill 2A, which is an insurance, affects the insurance in Florida. It reduces the time for insurance companies to pay or deny a claim. It used to be 90 days. Going forward, it's going to be 60 days. It reduces the time for insurers to review and acknowledge a claim communication. It used to be 14 days. Going forward, it's going to be 7 days. An insurance company has to begin an investigation in 7 days. It used to be 14 days. It reduces the time for the insurer, the insurance company, to conduct the physical inspection. It used to be 45 days. Now it's 30 days. It reduces the requirement to pay undisputed amounts of benefits. It used to be 90 days. Now it's 60 days. It also allows insurance companies to purchase reinsurance at reasonable rates. That'll keep insurance companies liquid. It reduces the deadline for policyholders to report a claim from 2 years to 1 year. So if you used to have 2 years to report a claim, now you only have 1 year, and you used to have 3 years for a supplemental claim. Now you have 18 months. So in that case, it's more harmful to the insured than the insurer. The Office of Insurance Regulation now can examine the handling of claims and can revoke licenses and fine insurance companies. It also makes it harder to get citizens insurance, which is the insurer of last resort for property insurance, flood insurance. If you can get, if other insurance companies are providing insurance, which is no more than 20% higher than citizens, you may not be eligible for citizens anymore. They want to make the citizens insurance the insurer of last resort, which was the original intent. There may be some increases for rates of coverage on risks that are not primary residents. That hasn't been resolved yet. And if you have a citizen insurance policy, say on wind, you're going to have to also secure flood insurance by 2027. That's sort of a quick summary of what the insurance legislation was. And the last piece of legislation is SB 6A, toll relief. And that provides SunPass or any other Florida issued transponder users, anybody who has a SunPass, that records 35 or more transactions per month. You are now eligible for an account credit equal to 50% of the amount paid for those transactions. And that'll be from January 1st to December 2023. So if you're doing 35 or more transactions per month with your SunPass, you have the opportunity to get an account credit equal to 50% of what you're paying for 2023. It's limited to 2-axle vehicles, but it includes the Sanibel Causeway, Cape Coral Bridge, and the Midpoint Bridge. That's the summary I have for you, Jay.
Okay, well, gee, there's not much content in that, David.
Well, yeah. Ken Gill asked me to do the insurance one, and the other ones I thought were useful to us.
Well,
I'm sorry if I took too
no, I mean, that's pretty thorough review. So I guess the most important thing of that is the possibility of getting your taxes reduced. Say if you've got an appraised value of your property, you know, from the tax assessor's office, and if, let's say, your land is half the value and your house is the other half of the value, and your home was uninhabitable for 2 months, in that circumstance, you'd get 1/12 of your property tax refunded. Is that correct?
You would cut it in half because your property is half, and then you would determine what the percentage reduction is. I don't know the answer to that. I would have to do the calculation.
No, I'm just saying if the property's, first, you can't use your house for 2 months.
Right.
And if half the value is land and half the value is house, then instead of getting 2 months, you're getting half of 2 months, which is
1/6
month.
minus one. Yes. And since it's only half, it's 1/12. Yes, that would be, I understand what you're saying. Yes, that could be right. Yes.
Okay. And we do not have a clear definition of what an uninhabitable means. I mean,
Well, we do have a clear definition. The definition is from the legislation means the loss of use and occupancy of a residential structure for the purpose of which it was constructed, resulting from damage to or destruction of the residential structure which was caused by the hurricane.
okay, well, that would seem to not include, well, I can't live there because there's no utilities.
Well, I don't know. You can't use it for the purpose it was constructed, resulting from damage to or destruction of the residential structure. So if you had water come in and it destroyed your wires, your utilities going to the house.
Yeah, no, I get that, but just the simple, say your house wasn't damaged enough to prevent you to live in it, but you couldn't live in it because there was no electricity and no water.
The legislation doesn't speak directly to that circumstances.
Yeah, right.
Circumstance, I would, if I would figure out what you're entitled to, and if it's worth making the application, I would do it. The worst thing that can happen is that the property appraiser will turn down your application.
Right.
David, I got one question when you're
Tony?
done. Jay. Going forward for the next year coming up, 2023, we have to have our application in by a certain date, is that correct?
For the tax reduction,
Yes.
the reduction is only for 2022, for the year 2022 at this point, but you have to have your application in by April. I just wrote that down. The application has to be in within the first 3 months of this year. So let's see, I said,
That's only for 2022, right?
it's only for 2022. That's right. The
You're getting a refund back.
Yes, you're getting a refund 2022. That's correct.
There's nothing in the books or applying for 2023? Because
Not at this point. That's right. A lot of the homes are uninhabitable in 2023. But at this point, that legislation, which was passed and signed, does not include 2023.
All right, thanks, David.
Okay. And the application has to be filed between January 1st and April 3rd. Because April 1st, I think, is on a weekend. So it's April 3rd.
Okay, would it be worth putting out an email blast with this information about the tax refund?
Sure, we can do that. I'll talk to Ken about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, just the contact information would be good, and then let people do their own work, I think.
Right. If you go to the property appraiser's website, there is actually, and you go to the hurricane section, there is actually a letter from the tax collector, from the Lee County tax collector. And on that page, there is actually a link to the Department of Revenue form DR-5001, which is the application that one has to fill out in order to get the refund. And there's a document on the website. It sort of looks like this, explaining it. And then here is this is the application form. I don't know if you can see it. It's probably backwards when I'm looking at it, but it may not be for you.
yeah, no, we get the idea.
Yeah, and that's the form.
Okay, well, I would suggest that you and Ken get together and just put out an announcement, just explaining as simply as possible the refund opportunity and how one goes about pursuing it.
Could you also add in, since, I mean, what you suggested were receipts from the utility company, but we know that we couldn't use water on the island. No one could use water on the island until X date, and no one had electricity till Y date. Could Ken put in something as well so that not everyone has to do the same work?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Is that reasonable?
Yeah. There's a question and answer on a Q&A from Susie Barry. She says, when you go to lipa.org, it's on the front page, very easy. She just completed hers.
Okay. Yeah, well, then maybe that's all the email blast needs to say.
Okay.
Just make people aware of the opportunity and what the link is to pursue it. David, did you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, well, before we move on to our next agenda item, which is election of officers, I think we should take a 5-minute break. So let's do
Jay,
that.
I think Kevin or Wayne may have just joined us if you want to get him in
Oh,
before
okay.
that.
All right, yes, let's do that. Kevin, are you there?
He's there, he's on mute. He may be in his car coming back from a meeting, and it might be difficult for him to turn off his mute button. I just don't know, but he's on mute. Commissioner Ruane, you are on mute on your telephone or wherever you are. Ken, I don't know if there's anything you can do to facilitate this.
I can ask to unmute him, but I can't.
Okay.
Which I've done, but I can't.
Okay, why don't we take the 5-minute break and we'll see what happens, Jay, and then we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's reconvene in 5 minutes and hopefully Kevin will be able to join us. 5 minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. 448 242. Okay. Yeah, he's obviously already dialed in. I texted him that. Do you think the telephone number is requesting the webinar ID? Ken?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But to be honest, I've never actually called into one of these.
Right.
All you should have to do is hit the one tap dial. Or it says one tap mobile on the invite.
Yes.
All you have to do is hit that and it'll dial the passcode, everything. He doesn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I don't know what to do, you know, I can't.
Tell him I just resent him an invitation to his email address. That's the only thing I've got. If he goes to that and clicks on it, he should be able to get in.
Okay. Found it. He should call in momentarily. Thanks, but okay. I'll send him what you just told me.
And I guess I don't know who Kevin is that we have on here, so I thought it was him.
Yeah, right. I guess he could call me and I could put him on speaker. All right.
David, are you still typing or what are you?
He's sending me a text. But it's, so I'm waiting to see what he's sending me. I'm tempted to just have him call my cell phone and then I would put it on speaker and everybody be able to hear. We've done that before. There are extreme circumstances, but it seemed to work. You know what? I'm gonna call him. Let's see.
Okay.
So easy. Let's see what happens here. Hi, this is not working. So I'm going to do is put you on speaker from my phone, and then you'll be broadcast over the over the meeting. Okay. I'm putting you on speaker, right? Okay, you see if you can, they can hear you. Can you hear? Go ahead, Kevin.
I can hear him.
Okay, Kevin J. Brown here. We very much appreciate you trying to join our meeting. I know this is difficult to do it this way, but we appreciate it. We'd be happy to hear any updates that you might want to give us in terms of the county's response to the hurricane and any advice you have for us into how we can improve our response.
Sure. So, I think a couple things as we all understand where we are today. So a week before Christmas, there was a special session up in Tallahassee. The first item that everyone is concerned about is debris removal. As unprecedented, we're removing debris that historically has not been our responsibility. With that in mind, FEMA had approved us for X number of days, and the legislator, being forward thinking, said that they would put up the 25 cents. Happens with FEMA reimbursement is you receive 100% reimbursement for debris and construction debris as well. That's both vegetation and construction. After a period of time, it then goes from a 75-25% split where the county and or the city is responsible for 25 cents. Fortunately, during special session, the legislators approved that the state would be responsible for any of the 25 cents that was required for debris. So we haven't had any financial impacts of the massive amount of debris we've had to pick up. Between the counties and the cities, we're looking at almost 20 million acre feet of debris that we've had to pick up. So that's been the first big struggle, an unprecedented amount. We trying to do the best we can to go to the appropriate areas. The second area in the special session was the governor, through his own initiative, passed legislation that would not have a taxable value associated with any properties that were dramatically impacted by the storm. And that would be effective the 28th of September. So if you think of your property tax bill, which we all had to pay, first and foremost, he extended that through January with the full discount and then through May with no discount. But moreover, what he did, if your house was substantially damaged, he is actually going to have the county send you back a refund. So if you think of a tax bill, it's for 4 quarters. So the 4th quarter, your tax bill is derived of taxable value and land. Land and building, I should say. So the building portion, if you had substantial damage, would be changed anywhere from, it being decreased depending on the amount of substantial damage. A, it could be reported by the homeowner. B, the tax assessor's office did an amazing job of trying to determine what houses were substantially impacted based on reports, based on various technology that we had, drones, etc. So there's a process that there'll be rebates being given out to taxpayers. Thereafter, the third item was then to obviously make the municipalities and the county whole. As you rebate taxpayers their ad valorem taxes, we already passed our budget. So there was really no flexibility within our budget to actually accommodate that refund. So we then will actually have the revenue replacement backfilled by the legislators. So we had an opportunity to talk about that very item as well during special session. They then did some toll considerations and rebates associated with if you were going to use a particular toll, like the Sanibel toll, if you went over it more than 15 times, and they count each trip as 2 times. There would be a rebate given with that as well. So the special session was really about trying to give some taxpayers relief right away, try to make the municipalities whole as quickly as we could, and really deal with the unprecedented amount of debris and what were the financial repercussions. Because I could tell you that Lee County, as strong as we are financially, would not have the wherewithal to pay the 25 cents. if we had to pay that portion of debris pickup. Because again, through the governor's initiative, we were not only picking up debris in the right of way, but we were taking construction debris, which was unprecedented. So if your home, was gutted, if your home needed to be torn down, at some point in time through the state, as well as the county, we were taking on the responsibilities of picking up that debris. And it's been a mammoth challenge for all of us to do so. I think it's coming to an end with that, with that aspect of debris pickup. We're still struggling in some of the outer parts of the county, in Pine Island specifically, and then Sanibel, it's its own municipality. So they have, some challenges as well. Considering the bridge wasn't open for 3 weeks. It became very challenging to start the clock since they were already 3 weeks behind. So I think the legislators had a pretty good session where we had the opportunity. I just left the governor's event and he was going to do an initiative on water. Unfortunately, I had a meeting that I'm driving to now at 11 o'clock. And next week I've been invited to testify both the Senate and the House on resiliency committees, which actually are appropriating committees relative to Hurricane Ian. So I've been asked to testify next Wednesday and next Thursday. I'll drive up Tuesday after our meeting. As some people may or may not know, the county commissioners gave me the title of chairman for the long-term recovery task force, which basically encompasses all aspects of the county, including fire, police, school board, health board, the 6 cities, as well as the county. So the legislator would like us to make asks in its entirety, as opposed to piecemealing, having 10 or 11 different entities kind of put together. So I've been working through everyone's legislative agenda, trying to make sure we address all the items that we have. We've worked very closely with the legislator since the special session and continue to have meetings with them. And, again, like I said, next week we'll be back up there. I think considering where we were some 100 days ago and where we are today, I think we've accomplished a great deal. There's still a lot of work to be done, and I'm not trying to discount that. But in the same token, I think, this is a 1 in 500 year storm. I've worked really hard to try to make sure we separate Sanibel from Captiva. We got the bridge opened January 2nd. We had the curfew removed from Captiva. Obviously, as Sanibel has been struggling, we have consistently given more law enforcement vehicles to try to do the best job to do policing. Many businesses on Captiva were approaching us to, open up and have commerce start to begin. The governor is a big person in trying to assist the communities, but he also is a big believer that you have to assist yourself. So, I know Twin Waters, I know, there were a couple of restaurants that were looking to open and they need population and they need people to do so. The next item that we're working on very closely to see what if we could open at least Love Beach and Captiva, as we recognize that Captiva is head of Sanibel, and we want to continue to let everybody recover on their own speed, but I don't want to prevent anyone from recovering. That's one of the reasons why, we thought it was important to open up the causeway to get rid of the check curfew. If we find there continues to be, if Chief Dalton, Ricky, reinforcements, we've assured we'll give the necessary reinforcements to make sure they have the support necessary. So people don't look at this as an opportunity. Based on the traffic counts that we've been monitoring over the causeway, traffic is dramatically reduced, probably down as much as 70% as what it was a year ago during season. So I don't know how many people are actually coming to Sanibel, but we want to give the businesses that have made the decision to open the best opportunity to thrive and see that. And that's consistent with the governor's initiatives and orders that we've been given. He has a hard time helping with any type of financial incentives if, in the same token, we're not going to allow the businesses to help themselves. And people want to get back to work. They want to get back to their normal way of living. So those are the highlights of what I honestly can tell. you all and give you that update. I can certainly pause if there's a question or two that anyone wants to ask of me.
Kevin, this is David Mintz here. In terms of the task force that you're chairing, and I'm not asking for an answer now, but at some point, we'd like to know how we could have input and how we can assist in the best way possible for both you and for Captiva to be part of the task force. And I guess the question is, we have 3 projects that are very important to Captiva. One is our beach renourishment project. We're looking to renourish the beach. We've lost over 500,000 cubic yards of beach. And I know that's a question of how we get the funding to do that. We also, as you well know, since you've initiated it and been a major player here, we also have the sewer project that is pending, and we want to keep that moving forward. And we have a stormwater proposal for Captiva, which has now been submitted to DEP. All of those, I presume, have to be folded in some way with the task force and the general recovery, because these are not standalone projects. So I'm not asking for a response now, other than maybe at some point we can talk about how those 3 projects can work well with your task force going forward.
Sure. I mean, I can touch briefly on them. I won't go into too many details. So beach renourishment is an item that we've bundled. Sandoval's beach renourishment, Fort Myers Beach, Bonita Beach, Captiva, and we've actually been talking to legislators with a total amount for reimbursement of about $75 million. There has been $150 million for beach renourishment in appropriations that was given during the special session. So if that amount needs to go up because of Hurricane Nicole as well from the East Coast, they're trying to get a feel for, and that's why testimony is so important. Understand what that is, but the amount that we're asking for in total is $75 million to be appropriated across the board. So I do have each initiative that we're aware of, and certainly aware of, how much square footage and how much capacity. As far as the task force is concerned, we're in the infancy stages as we work not only with a company that does the accounting, because any type of appropriations need to be accounted for, but then we need a facilitating company. It'll be on the agenda for Tuesday for me to talk about the facilitating company. That company needs to be hired. So we're a week or 2 behind in what we were hoping to roll this out a little bit earlier, but between the holidays and between special session, it became virtually impossible for us to try to do that. But we'll keep you engaged in that conversation. We have gotten some applications. I know on the natural resource side from Captiva, I know Kate Goodham has actually been appointed. So if there's people that want to serve in any of the branches that we have, feel free to contact my office. Pamela's just going to ask you for a basic resume on yourself, as we will have about 10 branches, and we'll have about 10 people on each committee, and then there'll be subcommittees as well. So we do envision this to be a long-term project. We do vision that the branches will meet on a weekly basis. The facilitating company will be an outside firm that facilitates not only meeting, but they'll facilitate, ideas that the ideas that come out in the meeting, the research that might be necessary. They'll identify grants that are out there. So we get the most as we possibly can out of this, this situation. But that's the highlights from that, David. But we'll keep you very close to, the conversation and make sure that you're engaged. But feel free anytime you need to reach out to Pamela. We have a skeleton of what the task force looks like, which is elected officials, and the branches are from the public. We look to have the branches been really filled by the public. We'll have commissioners that'll sit on it, but we're not going to appoint any commissioner as a chair of the branch. So if it's economic recovery or natural resources or infrastructure or housing, they'll be chaired by individual people. And there's a few people that have actually stepped up. So in building capacity and permits, for example, Sid Kitson has stepped up. I want to chair that because obviously Babcock Ranch did so well with resiliency. So what does that look like? What are the things we're going to start talking about? There will be items that we talked about. There's a lot of conversations about what height should be allowed given, the type of storm surge that we had. So we're gonna be talking about some broad topics that I know are sensitive to people, but we have to keep resiliency in mind, and we have to make sure we don't go through this ever again. So there'll be broad conversations, there'll be a lot of dialogue associated with them, and we'll have an opportunity to certainly try to come up with what we believe is the best thing for our community.
Tony, you're on mute.
I'm sorry?
No, Tony Lappy has a question, but he's on mute, so he's getting himself off mute.
There we
Go
go. Kevin, thanks for all you're doing in the governor, and the point you made about the communities that help themselves are the ones he seems to like. I wonder if there's any influence they can do on Sanibel to lift the curfew or make it more reasonable till maybe midnight for the restaurant workers on Sanibel and Captiva getting off the island without any hassle. I just think that, you know, midnight curfew would be very helpful for all the restaurateurs on both islands. So just a point.
Yeah, that's an important one, Tony. Thanks for bringing that up.
We recognize the restriction, we're doing things in increment steps. The curfew being lifted in Captiva was the first increment step. There is a lot to try to do, and we recognize we're on the same page. I'm also trying to work within Sanibel to understand what other support they might need to feel comfortable in their citizenry, feel comfortable that we're there to support them. And if that means more law enforcement, then we'll have more people doing that. But I couldn't agree with you more, Tony. We're trying to have commerce get back to commerce. And, as someone that comes out to Captiva, even though I am who I am, I don't want to get hassled as I'm trying to come off the island. We have a lot of friends on Sanibel, and, to try to get off the road at 9 o'clock is a challenge, to say the least. You have dinner with some friends, you better be off, 8:15 and on the road. And, I've gone through the experience of, actually being pulled over. So I know the situation firsthand. So it's on an item that I'm going to definitely address.
Okay, Kevin, we really appreciate you calling in for this meeting and the updates we get to you. It's very much appreciated. I'm very supportive of your efforts on the overall Lee County recovery plan, and the panel will try to help you in any way we possibly can. And I just want to say I really appreciate all your effort in that regard. We've had updates on debris removal at our meeting today. We've had an update from the chief engineer on the bridge. I think overall things are, I think our recovery, as we've been, the county has directed, has really been exceptional, for us out here. I think we're doing very well given the challenges, we had beginning 90 days ago, and really appreciate your effort on our behalf here on Captiva.
Well, it's an honor to serve, honestly. It's an honor that the county commissioners gave the opportunity to chair this. Look forward to kind of get us back to normal. As a business person, someone that meets a payroll every week, I understand the challenges that you have, and I'm more than sensitive to the situation that we have to go through, trying to find a balance between people, between businesses, and trying to make sure we provide a safe environment. And I guess sure everybody will make sure safety first. I don't want to impose compromise, but try to give everybody an opportunity. If you need anything, feel free to call my office. Pamela Smith certainly is here to help. Life's a little bit crazy since I have another responsibility. And I'm sorry for today, but I didn't really plan on the governor being an hour and a half late for his appointment. And I'm walking in an 11 o'clock meeting as we speak.
All right.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll let you go. We appreciate very much your update. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Okay. Good to hear from Kevin. David, I think you reported out basically everything that he told us,
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know he was going to cover that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't know that I covered it, so there you go.
Exactly, right. Okay, well, let's, David, did you have anything else or?
The only thing I have is on the panel ordinances, which is later on the agenda, so we can hold off.
Okay, all right, well, let's move on to election of officers for the coming year. I'll just open that up for discussion or anybody that wants to make any nominations. David, did you want to start off?
Yeah, I do want to start off, and maybe I thought about this a lot, and I guess because of the hurricane and because we're in the midst of a recovery mode on Captiva, and because our current officers of the panel have relationships, good relationships at this point with the county and Sanibel, which is really vital to this recovery. And I think because continuity at this time is very important for Captiva, I would like to nominate, I guess, the 3 current officers to another 1-year term to have that continuity. And that would mean that Jay, even though I know will be reluctant, but that Jay would continue as president, that I could continue as vice president, and Tony Lappy would continue as treasurer. I think given the situation we're in at this point, and given the relationships we have, I think it's in the interests of Captiva to have that continuity. That's just my position on this. I don't know how other people feel about it. We would have then 1 open officer position, which is unfilled because Mike Lanigan has termed out, and that would be for the secretary. And we would need to have additional nominations for the secretary and an election. But I guess my view at this time, and it may be a minority view, it may be only my view, but I think it's in the interest of the panel to just for 1 additional year, given the situation, to just renew the current officers. People disagreed, you should just speak up.
Okay, well, so you're saying that I should continue on, you would continue on, and Tony Lappy would continue on in their current roles. And then
For a year.
if that were to go forward, then we would then focus on nominating a secretary to replace Mike Lanigan. Well, speaking for myself, I've served as the panel president. I think it's the last 2 years now. And, I'm certainly willing to, continue on for another year as president. David, you've indicated you would continue on for another year as vice president. Tony, would you do another year as treasurer?
I don't have any money.
I'm sorry?
I don't have any money, but sure, I'll be honest.
Okay, well, David, I think for me, your recommendation makes sense, so I would be supportive of it. Does anybody else have comments or that they would like to make, or alternative ways to approach this?
No, I agree with Dave. I agree with David. I think you guys would be great moving forward. So yeah, I agree.
Is there anybody out there who wants to volunteer to be secretary? Or at least put their name?
Well, Tony, let's deal with the 3 first, and then we'll come back to secretary.
I'm
Okay.
very supportive of the current officers.
Okay, well, could I have a motion?
Well, Ann was going to say something. Ann Brady was going to say.
Okay,
I was just going to say, I also agree. I think if you're willing to serve again, it would make a more seamless entry into 2023 and all that's going on. So
Okay.
thank you for that, because it's a lot of work. So it's
Thank you
appreciated.
very much for what you've done.
Yep.
I agree.
all right, well, could I have a motion then that Jay Brown would be president, David Mintz will be vice president, Tony Lappy will be treasurer?
I'll make that motion.
I
Could I have a
second.
second? Okay, is there any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, raise your hand. Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay, well, I think I thank you for another term as president.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your service.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks all. Let's move on to secretary. Does anybody want to make a nomination to replace Mike Lanigan as secretary?
I would ask, is Bruce McDonald interested in being secretary? Because I would nominate him if he's interested.
well, I'll do it if asked, if I carry a simple majority.
Somewhat. I didn't hear you.
If I can muster a majority, I don't want to be like Kevin McCarthy.
Well, we don't think this will take 15 votes.
Good joke.
Okay,
right.
well, I think
I
that
nominate,
I'll
nominate-
nominate Bruce McDonald. Or maybe I don't think I'm allowed to nominate anybody. Will somebody does somebody want to nominate Bruce McDonald?
I am nominating Bruce McDonald.
Can I have a
I'll
second?
second it.
Okay, any discussion on that? All in favor of Bruce McDonald being secretary, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, Bruce, looks like you're secretary for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay, well, that doesn't require any more than about 30 hours of work a week, a month, so it's a good deal to take that on, Bruce.
So, Jay,
Yes.
Nicole has been able to join the call and she can give everyone an update. She's prepared to do the update on where we stand with the renourishment and the beach profiling, if you'd like it.
Okay, well, then let's do that.
Yeah, great.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for
Hi,
having me.
Nicole.
Hope
Thank you
everyone-
for being here.
Oh, no worries. Always great to provide an update. I know Daniel did mention he provided a briefing a little bit earlier in the meeting, but I just want to go into a little bit further detail. So I have a PowerPoint that I did give yesterday at the CEPD board meeting that I'm going to pull up here to walk through our findings from the post-storm survey and let you know where we're moving forward to. So let me share my screen and then we can see this PowerPoint.
You're up.
Okay, great. So looks like everyone can see my screen. So today we're going to go over the Hurricane Ian beach damage assessment and update on where we stand. So just to recap, I know we did provide immediate Hurricane Ian update to the community panel. I guess it's a month or so ago now, now that we're in January 2023. But just a general overview of Hurricane Ian and its impacts to Captiva Island. The beach did experience width and volume changes. We noticed volume loss, beach width loss. We noticed the beach elevation that you would lay your towel on and enjoy the beach with your family. That elevation has been lowered. There are sandbars present offshore. So typically we have a mild sandbar on the Gulf and you have larger sandbars present. Also, we've been seeing a positive sign recently. Some of these sandbars are becoming what's called reattachment bars. So it's almost like they're welding themselves to the shoreline and you see a little bit of water one day and then the water slowly disappears. So that's a good sign showing that you're slowly gaining a little bit of that lost beach width back. So that's a typical thing we do see after a large storm with the recovery of the beach profile. We also did note dune impacts, a loss of both the dune, the sand in the dune and dune vegetation. And one observation we did make generally when reviewing the data that we saw more losses in the central portion and south end of the island. So here I just have a quick overview of the volume loss and beach width loss, but I'm not going to go into great detail on that now because I have a few more slides to get through, and then I have slides detailing how we got to this and showing a little bit about that.
What is that chart on the bottom right?
So the chart on the bottom right is the tide level at the Fort Myers tide gauge. So the blue is the predicted. The blue is what the tide should have been. And then that red water level is what was observed. So you can see that it was almost, 7 feet above what was predicted at the Fort Myers tide gauge. So that's just a preliminary assessment of, water levels that were most likely in and around your area. But again, it's at Fort Myers, not on Captiva, because none of the tide gauges were functioning throughout the storm. So we don't really know the height of the water, but this is a good sign of indicative of regional conditions from the storm.
And is that your volume loss there? I thought someone had reported earlier we had 500,000 cubic yards.
We do. So that's where this is a general volume loss of the total beach profile. There are a few different ways to look at it. So I'm going to go through just some general observation slides, and then I'm going to dig deeper into these numbers. So don't want folks to focus on this quite yet. We'll be able to dig into the numbers deeper a few minutes. And here you can just see some general overview of what we saw post-project and what we saw post-storm. And I think, what we've been seeing and what we've been communicating to the CEPD and what the CEPD has been communicating to the community, if we didn't have this beach project, we would have saw substantial damages on the island. And the beach project did perform as it were to, providing an effective storm damage buffer and reducing the potential storm damage benefits. So this was a key benefit of, the maintenance program that is in place on Captiva Island. And here you can just see some pictures going through. Here is pre-project conditions from 1988, post-project, November 2021, and then October 2022. So you still see you do have that beach width, but you have that lower beach profile. And again, that exposed rock revetment that was present in 1988. So we did see a lot of volume lost from the dry beach. And here in this picture, you're looking north towards Jensen's Curve. This arrow right here is actually pointing to the sign. So it's a little hard to see, but again, you can see the general observations trend that we did see. Loss of beach elevation and loss of dune and reduction of beach width. Here's looking south towards Tween Waters. And again, the same trend showed in this area too. So knowing that we were seeing losses, the CEPD contracted our firm to go out and do beach profile surveys. So in the state of Florida, beach profile surveys are conducted at our monuments that are about every 1,000 feet along the shoreline. And these go from Redfish Pass to Blind Pass. So we conduct a beach profile survey every 1,000 feet, and we conduct them with the survey crew on the dry beach doing the topographic survey. And then we conduct the hydrographic portion of the survey utilizing our boat to get the offshore portions. And we use this data for volume computations. So here's an example of one of the beach profiles. I pulled this one out because it's right at Jensen's Curve in the pictures that we were just looking at. So the green line is November 2021. That was present pre-Hurricane Ian. This red line is what was present post-storm. So this is the area that we like to enjoy. Here's the dune, here's that nice beach area that we enjoy with our friends and our families when we all go out to Captiva Island. So you can see this sand right here was eroded off the beach, but it was placed into offshore bars. So as we, go and look at what was the beach performance, what was the volume changes, we're utilizing this data. So I'm going to mention something in the next slide called mean high water shoreline change. This is how much the mean high water line shifted from pre to post storm. So pretty much on Captiva Island, it's right about that 0 foot elevation. Mean high water is 0.6 feet. So if you just want to use that 0 foot here as a visual tool to gauge what we're looking at, Here you can see it was almost 50 foot of shoreline loss from pre to post storm. So these are the survey information we use to compute this information. So in the next slide, you can see the shoreline changes. And overall, you can see it was very different throughout the whole island. North of the island at Redfish Pass, the mean high water shoreline eroded slightly, but it didn't experience that great deal of erosion that we saw at Central Captiva Island, and again on the southern portion. So overall, in general, if you look at the shoreline on average, it's about 20 feet of erosion. However, you can see we did have isolated areas that did lose 60 feet here, 40 feet here. So those are areas where we did see a dramatic reduction in the beach width. And now this is what we discussed earlier. There is a few ways to look at volume changes. The first way I'm going to present here is that 51,000 that you saw on the opening slide. And this is called total profile volume loss. So we start at the most landward portion of the dune and we go out to what's called the engineered depth of closure. And that's the point where sediment transport should not usually occur. So it's the part of your active beach profile, and that's at minus 13 feet NAVB on Captiva Island. Day-to-day conditions, you're not going to see sediment move past that. However, in a major storm, there is the potential for it to move past it. And we did see it move past it with the passage of Hurricane Ian. So this is looking at where the sand moved all throughout that active beach profile from the minus 13 foot contour up into the most landward limit of the dry beach. And you can see that, you know, more towards the north end of the island, we had a little bit higher volume losses, but it was pretty moderate throughout the whole island because we saw all that dry beach get moved from the upper contour into the lower contours from, you know, -5 to -15 feet. So it's almost showing a wash of sediment loss. So we wanted to look at the volume changes in a different way. In 2021, we recently constructed the beach renourishment project, and there is a construction template that is utilized. So we overlaid that on the post-storm profile and said, all right, from that construction template, how much was lost? And this is where you can see there were no gains. There was dramatic losses throughout the whole island, again, with the central portion and south end experiencing the higher losses. And this is where we saw that 500,000 number, that 505,000 cubic yards of volume loss. So the next slide just reiterates it, that there are very different ways to look at volume changes and how the agencies will fund projects. So again, we looked at the volume loss just above that mean high water line, and you're at 377,700. So you can see that when you're looking at the most visual portion of the beach profile to the general public, to homeowners, to property owners throughout the island, that there were large losses in the, you know, upper beach profile to that, you know, wading depth. But when you get out to the deeper water, a lot of that sand, and as you can see right here, was deposited there. So this is where our next steps for trying to gauge a rehabilitation project come into play. So there are two components. There's the federal funding component and the state funding component from the DEP. So there are two potential cost share partners here. It's either the Army Corps of Engineers or FEMA. So historically, for the past, I would say 10 years or so, FEMA has been a cost sharing partner post-storm. Prior to that, it was the Corps of Engineers. Right now, FEMA and the Army Corps are deciding who that federal funding component should be. And this is where the importance of the volume loss comes into play. FEMA really only looks at that total volume loss across the active beach profile. So from the landward limit of the dry dune to that -13 depth. So this would be a minimal federal funding. However, historically, the Army Corps of Engineers has been interested in rebuilding the full template. And right now, the DEP is also having discussions that they think it should be replacing the template volume. So we're currently working with CEPD lobbyists, to put a letter of support to the DEP. And we're waiting for the federal funding agencies to determine who is the eligible party, to let them know our position on which volume should be funded and what magnitude of a rehabilitation project should be put forward. The DEP has been a great cost-sharing partner. I think the state's done a lot for the island in a whole with the quick response. Most recently with the special session that did occur, they provided over $1 million for beaches and beach repairs. So they're in the rulemaking right now to try to deliberate what is the process that these local communities impacted by Hurricane Ian have to go through to get this funding. So we are ready to go. Once that rulemaking gets done, I think it should be wrapped up this month. I'm thinking it'll probably take them another month to implement. And I'm thinking by early spring, the DEP will have the application process open for us to apply for post-storm funding to get, state funds in the bank to move forward with a rehabilitation project. And by that point, we shouldn't hear from the Army Corps and FEMA, which one is the responsible federal cost share entity. And we'll be able to move forward with knowing exactly what the planning process will be once we have those final key components in place. So,
Nicole, this is David Mintz.
yes.
This is the second time I've seen this presentation, and I know it's hard for people to get their arms around it. And I think I'm starting to understand it now, but it seems to me that there is a crisis potentially here. And if in fact FEMA is determined to be the funding agent for this project, it looks like from what you're showing us that we could be in a position where we won't get funding to replace the dunes on our beaches. That the sand that FEMA would reimburse for only would not be sufficient to rebuild the dunes, which is so protective to the island. Is that a fair statement, or is that?
So it's not necessarily accurate. It's accurate that FEMA would only provide you the funds to replace 51,000 cubic yards. However, the state would come in and based upon conversations we're hearing at the state level, they're going to cost share the construction template volume. So FEMA is only going to give you a certain amount of the cost towards the project, but then the state would be a greater cost share partner in reconstructing the dunes and the dry beach that we saw the losses on.
And that would come from the $100 million, so to speak, that's been allocated by the new recent
yes, correct.
Nicole, when I was speaking with you, I thought you said that FEMA might change how they count. Is that still true, or they're going to only do the replacement?
FEMA is pretty guideline based, and they follow a certain regulation called Papa G. I have not seen them be very lenient on altering their point of view on volume losses. However, I have seen the Corps of Engineers come in and be lenient on what volume they decide to use. They like to show big projects. So if they get a large appropriation, they usually come in and like to try to rebuild a larger project.
With the Corps, you told me we may have issues because of right-of-ways. Is that right?
Yes, because easements and public access. So that's what the Corps is looking into right now. They're moving forward, both the Corps of Engineers and FEMA, for any type of project with federal funding. You have to have a project worksheet. So both will utilize the same worksheet no matter what, but they're in the process of looking into that and looking into the history on the project. And that's when we should get a direction if it'll either be Corps responsibility or FEMA responsibility for the federal cost share component.
Nicole, are there 2 or 3 tranches of funding? I mean, there's the FEMA funds, which you described, there's the state funds, which we talked about, the 100 million. Is there separate funding associated with Army Corps of Engineers, or are they just engineers? Is there a funding piece of that if the Army Corps decided to do the project?
So there's 2 components for the project. You have state funding and federal funding. You either get Army Corps of Engineers funding or FEMA funding. You can't get both because you can't dip from the same federal money.
But
pool.
if you hadn't asked.
So there is an Army Corps separate pot of money from the Army Corps, separate from.
Yes, so it will be appropriated down through Congress to the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay, and is it your sense that there's sufficient funds among the 3 tranches, I'll call, or the 3 pots of money to fund the various communities that need to get beach renourishment? Or are we going to be fighting other communities to get some limited resources? What's your sense at this point?
You will be fighting other communities to get, this type of funding. But I think the state was very proactive in asking communities right away, what do you think their losses were? Give us a cost estimate of losses. And they tried to make sure that the pool was enough to make all the money, go around to all the communities. So I feel pretty good in the appropriation level that we're seeing, that communities that need funding will receive the funding.
Okay, that's
What did we put in, Nicole?
I think we told them maybe between 12 and 15 million. So we were conservative on our estimate, but we wanted to let them know we did suffer substantial losses, and that could be a request that wouldn't shock them if it did come in.
And that is in comparison to our 20-some million that we spent on our last beach renourishment, right?
Yeah, the beach component of the project, I believe, was 19 million.
Okay.
Hey, Nicole, it's Bruce McDonald. Thanks for your presentation. In the past, I understand when we've got estimates for renourishment, I think mobilization has been a big difference maker, and given several communities in this area are going to I'm sure going to be making applications, I would think there's some economies of scale of like working in a coordinated fashion. In other words, if Sanibel's doing some, we're doing some, it probably make sense to do them at the same time frame.
Yeah, and that's where we do try to coordinate with the dredgers to see if there's any opportunities for regionalization in the bid, or if they, we try to have our bid go out and piggyback, or go out in tandem with someone else's bid if they could provide any cost savings. So we do look for opportunities in regards to that, but also we do have the higher cost of mobilization built into our cost estimate.
Crystal didn't come.
Okay.
I mean,
Nicole,
Thank you.
Nicole,
Yes.
I have a question. Let us just for thinking about other properties or areas that are looking for renourishment. If our beach was renourished 5 years ago, would there be a kind of like a prorated on the beach? Because our beach was so new, do we benefit from that, being able to get a larger amount?
I think, you're benefiting a little bit from the beach being so new. You had a lot of sand that was placed, and typically it takes about, 2 years, sometimes up to 3 years for the beach profile to naturally equilibrate. And Ian made it equilibrate very rapidly, a lot quicker than you anticipate. So I think you did benefit slightly from the rapid equilibration of the beach profile compared to the more lengthy period we would have usually seen.
Nicole, one more question. I'm sorry, but since it's going to take maybe a year for this process to work its way through funding and planning, et cetera, is there any remedial or action we should take in preparation for the coming hurricane season, just in case we're confronted by storms or hurricanes before we get a chance to renourish this beach? Is there something we should be doing in terms of the dunes, in terms of tractors, in terms of building up artificially the dunes, or something to prevent some sort of catastrophic event from occurring before we get a chance to renourish?
Mhm. Well, I think that's right now, working with Daniel and the commissioners at the CEPD, seeing if there's anything that we can do immediately short term in the budget, that is allowable for the community. So I think, we're trying to see if there's any quick options, and then also looking at the long-term repair option.
I mean, do you have any sense of what a quick option would be? I mean, I'm not talking about poles and ropes. I'm talking about
No.
actually something with the dunes to prevent water from flowing onto the streets and into the houses.
Yeah, so it could potentially be trying to build a small dune with trucking sand into the community. Again, that gets relatively pricey, bringing dump trucks in and placing it on the dune, and trying to figure out who could potentially be a cost share partner, because right now there's no immediate funding in place. So it might be retroactive funding, but it would be done at the risk that you may not receive any cost sharing assistance for it. We're seeing sand that's trucked into communities with easily accessible areas, coming in at $60 a cubic yard. And, the last project was under 20. So there's quite a large difference between the trucked in sand and the dredged sand that comes from the larger.
And Nicole, things like putting big rocks, whatever, big riprap is not allowed because of where it is, or other kinds of protection.
And it's viewed as a permanent structure, not a temporary solution. So if that was the option, it would have to go through the formal permitting process.
The what process?
The formal permitting process. Just for an example, the communities over in Volusia County that were impacted by, first Hurricane Ian, and it wasn't a large impact, but Hurricane Nicole really came in when the conditions were exacerbated. And they're just doing temporary protective measures, putting sand trap bags down. So it's essentially a very, very large sandbag, or they're utilizing water dams in certain areas. So all the solutions over there are temporary solutions.
So I would like, as one of the commissioners, I would like to get a sense from the community, or at least the panel members, as to what the appetite is. I don't know if that's the right word. How hard, and do we have a big appetite for this? Do we need to be working hard on trying to get a temporary solution? Even if it costs if it costs the island property owners to do it. Let's say we could do something.
I think, Linda, I think the question would come down to how useful would that temporary solution be in the scheme of things, and how much would it cost? And if a solution to get us through the next hurricane season was something that we could really rely on and would make a difference, then I think that's something the community would consider. If it's something that we don't have any of that kind of guarantee or hope for, then I think it's a different situation. I am concerned that if we do have another hurricane, even if it's a category 2 or category 1, but we don't have sand on the beach and we don't have dunes, that I'm not sure how much more of a disaster this community can take, or Sanibel for that matter. Right. And so it just seems to me this is a question CEPD has to address. I don't have an answer for it. I don't even know how to think about it. But I do, all I'm hearing is that the beach renourishment that we had, the recent beach renourishment did so much to protect Captiva. And now we're going to be going to another hurricane season without that protection.
Yes, and we were hoping that we could get things moving more quickly than they are. But I think this becomes an item that we need to work with Apton to understand what are the possible options with potential costs. Nicole,
Yeah, Linda, we're still quantifying the exact dune losses, so that number is something that we're working on and hoping to have in the next coming week or so. I have my engineer, she's been started working on it late last week, so we're trying to hammer down exactly what was the quantity of the dune loss and what you would need to put into the dune to repair it.
but if there are things that we could do that are more temporary, even if it would be sandbags along vulnerable areas, is that an option? What might be the
The
options? we
sandbags
could offer?
would most likely have to be removed before sea turtle nesting season.
So we need to figure out if there are options, and if so, what are the options, and then talk to the community about them to see if what we could do or what we can't do.
Well, Linda, this is Jay. If Captiva has to pay for that itself, you're gonna, I think you would have to go through the whole MSTBU process.
We could never get there, right?
I wouldn't think so, no.
You can't get there from here.
Yeah, I mean, just to go through the MSTBU process would probably take you through next hurricane season.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I agree.
I
yeah,
don't think it's the MSTBU process. I think it would be CEPD has the authority to do it. The question is CEPD would need some sort of referendum to allocate those funds the same way that they did for beach renourishment. I don't think, Jay, you would have to create a new organization like an MSTBU, a new taxing unit. I think CEPD has the authority. The question is they don't have the authority at this point to raise and spend those funds for that kind of project. And that's what they would have.
right. Okay, that's a good point, David, but it still would be a very difficult undertaking, I think, wouldn't it?
It would be, yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, I was sort of, thinking, stupidly, I guess, which is, do you, before the hurricane season, take a bulldozer and take sand that's on the beach and build up the dunes to a height that's protective? I don't know if that works or makes it worse or anything, but I just didn't know whether there's something we can do with the existing sand that would further create resilience from a storm coming onto people's properties. I just don't know, but I see CEPD to take a look at that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that I think we need to task Aptum with that, and Aptum, I am sure, has the capabilities to figure this out with us. We can also, I don't know, there's and Nicole, you could help me here. Can we learn more at this? Nothing. I take that back. There's a big conference coming up, and maybe we can learn more at that. But I think Aptum needs to guide us through this as to what's potentially possible.
And that's where we're trying to dig into what potential costs are out there and, relaying that onto you as quickly as we get the numbers. And also, at the meeting, yes, it is a technical beach conference for the state of Florida and the nation. But there's going to be hopefully folks from the DEP and the Corps there, not just staff level, but higher level folks that, we'll be able to have conversations with, during breaks or, after the sessions adjourned for the day. So that's something that, they're going to be very popular people at this year's meeting. And I think, trying to grab a few minutes of their time will, we'll try to get on the agenda too.
Mike Mullins has just texted that CEPD has emergency funds, and they may even have the ability to assess for emergencies. And whether this falls into that category, I don't know the answer to, but it's certainly something that people can look at.
That's true.
Yeah, I guess my question would be, can we bifurcate the beach renourishment with the dune replanting? I mean, the dune, can we get a year of growth in on the replantings without waiting for the renourishment project to get started? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, we were thinking about that. I think, again, perhaps it's best to have a workshop on this and work with Aptum on it, and whoever is interested, come in and be part of it. But I think also what I'm hearing is there is, well, I guess as this is obviously a priority for the community. And if we have to, quote, sort of waste some money in the near term to reduce our risk, you as representatives of the community and we as representatives of the community, depending upon the magnitude, think maybe this is a good idea, and they very much want we all want CEPD to pursue this, correct?
I think that's right, but I don't know the appetite for people to pay money for it, though.
Well, sooner or later we're going to have to pay for it. It's not probably. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything, Nicole, good presentation. That was very helpful. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no worries. Thank you guys for having me here.
Thank you, Nicole, for all you guys do.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the agenda. Next item is a fundraising effort for Fire Chief Powell. I think you've all had some communication on this. Basically, the situation is that Jeff Powell is probably facing after insurance reimbursement, something like about $200,000 of personal expense, to restore, his residence. And I don't know, I've had, significant input from people in the community. I know Bruce McDonald is very much, in favor of this and has worked on it, that the community ought to do something to try to help out our fire chief. He was there for the first 2-3 weeks, being the point man for the dealing with the catastrophe. And all the while he was doing this, he knew his own home was pretty much destroyed. His family has been displaced. And he's looking at, major costs, something like in the neighborhood of $200,000 after insurance to restore, his residence. And we have come up with a plan where we would like to raise money or allow the community to contribute to a fund to help out Chief Powell. This would not be a panel project. The panel would just handle the mechanics of the fundraising effort. The basic idea is we would form a group of sponsored donors, of which several of you have already volunteered to be on the group. And I, over the next week or two, will try to fill out that group with other people I know on Captiva that would be interested in helping out the chief. So we would create a group of sponsor donors, all, making a contribution to, his recovery. And then we would be sponsors of a communication that would go out to everybody in the community, using probably both the panel's email list and the CCA's list to encourage people to contribute to the fund. We've covered the legal aspects of this, where it is possible for, Jeff to receive this assistance from the community. Everybody that donates would have to sign a form that would accompany their donation, saying that they're not getting any quid pro quo from Jeff for making the donation to the fund. So what I'm bringing up to the panel is just your approval for the panel to handle the logistics, of doing this fundraising effort. So
Hey, Jay, maybe the other point to note is we also did reach out to the fire commissioners of.
Right, that's what I meant by the legal approvals, right? The fire commissioners have approved this effort, right?
Yeah, they've signed off on a resolution, yeah, just to have our belt and suspenders on here.
Right, so I just want to propose to the panel that that we go ahead and authorize Ken to handle the logistics of collecting these donations, along with the paperwork that's required to go with each donation. So
Jay, I have a question.
yes, Ann.
So has this have other Captiva fire personnel been affected by not being insured? I mean,
Not to any degree, and we've also checked with the other
Okay.
first responders.
okay,
The police department, and
Okay.
Jeff stands out as a unique, case.
okay. Yeah, all right, thanks. That makes sense.
That's a good question. That's a very good
Okay.
question.
Jay, is this fund, I'm just thinking of different, is this considered a 501c3 fund, or is this just a fund that people just
It's
write a
just a
check?
fund. Yeah, you would not be able to get a tax deduction for it.
I'm just trying to understand.
Right. No, I understand. That's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah, and we should clarify that in the letter. Look, I know there's a draft letter that some of us have seen, and we ought to clarify that, Jay.
And you
Okay.
might also clarify that in this, whatever you write, 100% of this is gonna go direct, it's a pass through and will go directly to, because some people may have confusion on this, so I would be
Yeah,
very
look,
specific
good
of,
point.
are you writing the check to the fund, or are we writing the check to Jay? I don't know.
Yeah, you're writing the check to the fund, but yeah, people need to be assured that this is 100% pass through to the chief.
And it's probably, and I kind of couldn't see the forest for the trees, but it's probably also worth in that letter mentioning that we did reach out to whether there were other first responders in need as well. We probably ought to put that in there, Jay.
Okay.
Yeah, because and I think Ann knows about it too, is that in the Charitable Foundation of the Islands, we started a fund and a matching fund to give money for the displaced workers of all the 501c3s that were, all the organizations on the island whose workers were displaced or had to be let go. And so they had to fill out forms. It was a different situation. This is just a one and done pass through is what you're looking at.
Yes, exactly. Ken, are you getting notes on these comments that have been made to revising the letter?
Yes, and I'll get another draft out in the next day or so.
Okay. Can I have a motion from somebody to allow the panel to handle the logistics of this?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion?
Just one point, as a treasurer, this will be coming in as a line item and going out as a line item. So, and in the point, do we want to make a specific date where the fund basically ends? In other words, your donation must be made by X date.
Yeah.
And then after that, we're going to send the checks back, I think, to make it easy for the accounting.
Yeah, I think that's right. Ken, we ought to probably put an end date on there, maybe 30 days after the letter goes out, something like that.
Probably more than that, but yes, we should put an end date. I would say 60
Okay.
or 90.
All right, let's go with 60. I don't think, people are going to get that email, and I would think most people would just make a decision on the spot rather than just put it away for a couple, 3 months.
Yeah.
I agree.
No credit cards, just plain old cash, right, or check,
Yeah.
it doesn't bounce.
Right.
Well, that's a question. That's a valid question. If you don't do credit cards, that's good, but it also means people have to then mail stuff to me.
Yeah, well,
And I
Think about
probably
it.
would prefer that it goes straight to me, not to the PO box, because until we have live meetings, me getting out to the, empty out the box is not going to be easy.
can I go to work? I mean, you're the only one that can pick up that mail at the PO box, correct?
No, there are
no.
other people who can. They would have to then make the deposit, but yeah, David can do it. Mike Morris can do it. I think there's one or two other signatories.
Or do you want to do it?
Yeah,
Whether you
we,
want to do a credit card or not, I don't know.
if it goes to the post office box, there won't be a problem picking up the mail, Ken.
Okay. So no credit cards, but checks. Okay.
Yeah, we have to have that signed form also, right? Don't we, with each
Yes.
donation?
Yes.
So I guess, does that mean then we can't do this using a credit card?
No, as long as they mail me the form.
Yeah, but if they gotta mail you the form, might as well just do a check, shouldn't they?
Well, the bigger problem with the credit card is that if we accept credit cards, it costs us money. And you have to decide that you're willing to take that expense because it's like a 3%.
I think we'll get more donations if we have credit cards, and because I think people don't use checks as much as they used to and would much rather do something electronic.
That's true, but they've got to fill out that form though. Is there? Well, Ken, I think we're getting into stuff you and I can work out.
Yeah, if you think.
One
of
other
that-
thought, Jay, was if we do get a check and the form's not there, we cash the check? I mean, I don't know.
I think we should chase the people down if we, I'm sure it's gonna happen.
They could send you the form electronically. They could scan it
Right.
and email it. So.
Figure it out.
Mike
Okay.
Mullins has also made some
You all
comments.
are raising some good operational points here that I hadn't fully thought through. Yeah, we've got to think about the logistics of this a little bit more, but
Jay, you may also want to have a chat with Mike Mullins. He's sent in a number of comments about concerns he's raising
okay.
in the Q&A. I'm not going to try to answer them because I don't have the answers, but
Yeah, Mike, would you give me a call, please, at your convenience, so I can understand what your concerns are? Thank you. Okay, I forget, we haven't voted on the motion yet, is that correct?
correct.
Okay, so everybody in favor, raise your hand, aye. Anybody
Aye.
opposed?
I
Okay, thank you all for that one. Next item up on the agenda, let's see, is Captiva Drive revegetation. John Johnson, you've been doing some work on that. Do you want to start off the discussion on that, which you all have recommended? At the last meeting, we formed a committee consisting of you and Mike Lanigan and Ken Gill.
Yep. Yeah,
You know,
Jay.
as to next step on that.
Yeah, Ken, Mike and I met to discuss, the safety of the bike path. And since the storm, it's a good time to look at vegetation that's going to be replanted and the expansion of the bike path, if that's something we want to do. We think we do have an ordinance that says no plantings within 2 feet of the pavement. And that's for under 8 feet. So I talked to Bob Walsh, I talked to Randy at Land Graphics, and they totally understand. That's just 2 landscapers, but they totally understand that ordinance. Now I called Sanibel to get their insight and to see if they had insight into, I know they have grass along their path there, and they referred me to Lee County. So the question is, we've always had a problem, it seems like we've always had a problem with vegetation growing over the pavement. If we can stick to the 2-foot buffer, we should be okay. Now, does Lee County, they may have some ideas as far as putting in pitch shell in a 2-foot area. Do we want to expand the bike path? I don't know about that. That's just more pavement. But right now, I can reach out to Lee County and see what their thoughts are. But I think the goal would be to keep the vegetation as far away from the pavement as we can. But if you look at like on the east side of the Captiva Drive, a lot of it, you have the bike path, then it slopes down. So I don't know if there's any chance of expanding the bike path with, 2 feet with pavement. So right now, I think we just reach out to Lee County and get their thoughts on, they know what our goal would be and see what they think.
Your original recommendation was to plant sod,
Yeah.
to fill up the 2 feet. I think there's issues, with doing that. A lot of homeowners, aren't going to want, to have to, first off, who's going to pay for the sod? You got that issue. Then secondly, a lot of the parcels around here don't have any sod, and now you're creating a new landscaping need.
Yeah, no, I
For
agree.
people-
Then you have to bring in the right dirt for it. A lot of
Yeah.
areas, it's just not feasible. So I think that would be out of the question. So I think it could either be like pitch shell, some type of pitch shell, or just leave it like it is. Just have dirt up to the bike path.
Well,
And
the
then,
problem is though, we've got a unique opportunity now, since most people's, roadside vegetation has been damaged in some manner, to do something with the roadway to keep people from, planting right up to the edge of the roadway and then having overgrowth, grow over the, the shoulder area, which has been our continuing problem. So, I mean, in an ideal world, Lee County would agree to expand the roadway 2 feet, on each side.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if we could get them to do that. That would probably be a pretty expensive project. I know along a good stretch of Captiva Drive, the telephone or the electric poles are right up against the edge of the roadway now. So I don't know. If you do something like pavement, all those are going to have to be moved.
yeah.
So I don't know, maybe, the best solution might be some sort of gravel or something,
Yeah.
for 2 feet, and then people plant up, to the gravel. But I think, maybe the next best step is to go to Lee County.
Yeah.
Explain the situation to them and see what their recommendations are and what they're willing to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ken had is it Randy Searchy?
Yes.
County. When Ken gets back, I can get with him and we can reach out to get their thoughts.
Right.
I mean, to me, the most important thing is I think it sounds like we need to have at least a 2-foot shoulder of grass or gravel or something that each side of the pavement, because in some places, particularly the S curves, there's 0, right? And
Yes,
now
right.
the S curve at the southern end of the island, like the vegetation's been decimated, and so now we have a chance to do that.
Right,
To
exactly.
fix that corner, at least on the Gulf side. And that, to me, those are the most important areas to address. They're along Captiva Drive and on the Tweenwater stretch, we don't, there's less of an issue. There's a little bit, but less an issue. And then along the Gold Coast, we have cases where as soon as the pavement ends, there's a drop off.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that
on the Roosevelt Channel side, right?
yeah. Well, and in some cases on the other side too. So it makes it unsafe to when and overhanging vegetation. So I think while this is going on, we ought to, and I can't recall if we've put this out in a previous note. So if we have, pardon the redundancy, but I do think we ought to get out to the community that we do intend to strictly enforce the 2 feet rule. And
Yeah, at the very least, we can do that, right?
And we ought to, especially in the cases where it's been problematic, where there's a fall off and and vegetation is within that buffer, so that people kind of know this is coming. So it's not going to be a shock.
Mhm.
I like to comment. Because I use the bike path, and what in the past, what has never been followed up is the 2 feet, cutting the vegetation away for 2 feet up to 8 feet high. And even now, when you look, there are areas where there's eucalyptus, there's palm trees, and even newly planted bushes. When you take the turn after the area when you take the turn where there's Jensen's on the Gulf and you go into inland a little bit, they just planted Calusia, and as soon as they grow, it's going to be very hard to keep them 2 feet away. And as someone who uses the bike path, not the bike path, who uses that pedestrian, what is it called, safety lane, it is very oh God, I'm nervous. No, it's one can really use it as long as the cutting away is really applied, and as long as there's no sand on it also. A lot of times there's sand, especially the stretch where it's right next to the beach. The sand goes on it, and then it can become unsafe for the bicyclist, and one has to ride in the roadway. But I don't know if the 2 feet of whatever one wants to cover the surface with is the most important part. The most important part is keeping it cut away so that the pedestrian safety lane needs to be clean, and the area in the village where one can't even use it because it's not even enough. There are the grates for the rainwater. If it could be made a safe pedestrian safety lane, it would be very user-friendly. Right now, it is not user-friendly. And the people that ride their bikes professionally, usually they go in the roadway anyway. They don't feel comfortable not using the road.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we make a distinction between considering creating a new bike lane or new pavement with a new bike lane on the road, which is a different question and is something that we have to bring to the community, and it requires a community buy-in, which is very different than what we're talking about here, which is that the county and the community have already agreed that there should be a 2-foot setback from the edge of the current shoulder, the paved shoulder, so that vegetation doesn't grow onto the paved shoulder, and so that vegetation doesn't grow over the paved shoulders. So at least we have a shoulder where people can walk and ride the bike. So what we're talking about is not anything new. What we're talking about is just finding the best way to basically enforce what already exists on the books. And I think that the best thing at this point, I agree with John Jensen, is that we can talk to NJ, we can talk to the county, and whether that be gravel or whether they just come by every month and cut back 2 feet, we leave it as dirt, whatever they recommend. But what we really want to do is just have enforced what is already on the books, which is just to produce a safety condition. And it's different than saying we are going to do some enhancement on the roadway for bicycles. That's not what we're doing. We're just trying to protect what we already have and what's already on the books.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, well, John, you want to follow through with that next step and
Yep.
get with the county. And I know, David, you know Randy Searchy pretty well. If
I do, and I can work with John on that and talk to him about it.
okay,
All right.
Talk to that together.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dave.
And I
Thank
think Marguerite basically laid out the issue, which is to make it safe,
Right.
like her and others who are bicycling down that path. And these are not just tourists. These are people who live here.
Yep.
right,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's not just bicyclists, it's also pedestrians. Very often in the village, these areas where you cannot push the stroller over. So very often pedestrians are also in the street because of it. And I think it's a safety issue.
Right, well, we do have Margaret, an ongoing project to create a pedestrian bicycle, expansion in the village area.
Yeah, I would love that. Yes.
Yeah.
That is in the works, but it's on hold for the sewer project.
Right.
Because we don't want to tear up the streets twice. And David still, I guess, got 2 people that haven't agreed to sacrificing their easement or.
Well, they were concerned about their vegetation on Captiva Drive. I don't think that's a legitimate concern right now.
Right. Okay. All righty. Let's move on. David, do you have anything on panel ordinances?
Yeah, I do. I last night about 5 o'clock, I received from the county their recommendations and a few edits to our 4 ordinances that are pending. And because it came in late last night, I haven't had an opportunity to thoroughly review them. But what I'm going to do for the next meeting is have what the panel already passed and what the community already vetted in terms of those 4 ordinances. And I will have the changes that the county needs to make them acceptable to the county attorney and the county. And so people will be able to see what the few changes are, which I hope are not substantive. And then we can get the panel to agree to those changes. We go back to the county. The county that will then set up meetings before the various committees. And then hopefully it'll get passed by the Board of County Commissioners before this season ends.
Okay, very good. Thanks for the update.
Right.
Okay, next up, wastewater. Where we are on this project, Sanibel has to complete 2 projects. First, they have to do a consulting study that will evaluate how they should handle the increased effluent that they will have by treating our wastewater. And then the second study they have to do is an economic analysis to figure out what the impact will be on their finances and set the appropriate rate structure to do that. So we need to complete those 2 steps with Sanibel. The county has already agreed to fund both of those projects, so the funding is in place to get them done. Then the next major issue is to get a final determination out of whether or not South Seas is gonna, become part of this project. To date, South Seas seems to be adamant that they want to continue on with the FGA facility. So it looks now like that they probably will not be participating in the project. But we need a final conclusion on that, because if they participate in the project, that would reduce significantly the average cost per property owner. Then the last thing we need to do is to get a good idea of what kind of public support that we're going to get, from this project. And when we have those components together, then we will know what the average after financial support from public financing will be, what the cost per property owner can be, and we can continue on with our MSDBU process. So that's current status of wastewater. Questions from anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, next, Stormwater Committee update, Linda Laird.
Hi, we're working to get a stormwater engineering project funded. We're submitting things for Deepwater Horizon funding. We've done that. Carrie from SCCF has been the lead on that and has done a grand job. We're also working to get a updated proposal from Kimley Horn that includes water quality. Water quality, we believe, will A, it will help the water quality, and B, it will help get the proposal funded. So we are waiting an updated proposal from Kimley Horn. We're waiting for that.
Okay, and we're hoping that we'll get funding for this project from the Deepwater Horizon
Money.
fund. If we don't, then we got to go back to Lee County and see if we can get them to.
Right. And meanwhile, we're getting a proposal written that is more complete. We'll be able to have a better proposal with more detail to give to the county.
Right. Okay.
Just so the community understands, Jay, this is a stormwater project to mitigate flooding in the village area from South
Okay,
Seas.
right.
There's serious flooding with rain events, et cetera, and this would be done at the same time as the sewer project, so they would be done jointly. And hopefully we could eliminate flooding in the village.
Okay. Any further comment on that?
No.
All right, let's move on to the budget. Ken, you sent out a revised budget to everyone for the year.
I did, and I'll put it on the screen to try to keep this simple and quick. I've made the changes that were discussed at the last meeting to increase administrative costs and put in support for ongoing projects. We've adjusted some of the way things are being presented to try to break out the county money that is essentially a pass-through, which is down here. So we've got the wastewater money for Sanibel that has been paid and not dispersed. The second study, which has been invoiced, and the iguana reimbursement, which we had an old invoice and we're waiting to pursue that. This gives you a sense of the cash flow. So we have a lot of money in house, but we have some of it that's already escrowed and some of it's directed donations. So it's a lower figure, but it's still a reasonable amount of money. Right now, we will be projecting a deficit for next year, which we have the reserves to cover. We've already, thanks to some extremely generous donations to start this year and end last year, we've pretty much almost made our solicited donations target.
Okay, so how does the $40,000 relate to the list of donors? Is this list of donors that you put out, is that people that responded to the mailing that went out?
It's post-storm and the folks who responded to the mailing, most of it from the mailing, but there were some people who, after Ian, started sending in checks. And I didn't break those out separately, but I can do that if you wish.
Okay, so does the $58,000 relate to the 40,000 solicited donations?
Yes, some of it covers that, and some of it is money that Yes, the 50, it's split over the 2 years because of when it was received.
Okay,
So you'll see a bit more accurate figure when I do an actual next month.
okay, so does that mean that we're likely to have exceeded the fundraising events of 40,000 that's in your budget?
We can hope so.
Okay,
Ken, has the letter gone out a second time?
No, I was waiting until we got, I wanted to know what other letters we were going to be sending out, so I don't start deluging people with solicitations. I didn't wanted to find out what was going to happen with the Powell letter before I timed a second one. But it sounds like
Okay.
that's going to take some more research, so I'll plan to to send out the solicitation again.
Yeah, there was a glitch on the website with the solicitation. And so I
Yeah,
think
that's been fixed. The trouble was with people who did it through their phones, they couldn't get in.
yeah, so I think it behooves us to send it out one more time, just as is.
Mhm.
Okay,
So,
go ahead. Sorry, Ken. Go ahead.
I mean, if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. I will need a motion to approve the budget, at least so we have the funds to work with.
okay, well, before we get that, on sending out the letter again, I'm hoping we could get the Jeff Powell letter out in the next couple of weeks. You know, Ken, so.
Well, I think David was planning to, I was planning to resend it to the email list with the glitch fix, and I can do that tomorrow. It sounds like from some of the comments that were made, the Jeff Powell letter will definitely take a couple of weeks before everybody's going to be happy with it.
Okay, all right, okay.
Also, I think it would be confusing to have the Jeff Powell letter and then our letter again. I think it makes sense to do the fundraising letter a second time, and then there's a break of, 2 weeks or whatever,
Yeah.
and then it's the Jeff Powell letter, and then it's done.
All
I
right,
agree.
let's send out the letter now, the fundraising letter, and then the Jeff Powell letter will follow in 2 or 3 weeks, I guess.
And I'll modify the letter to thank people who've donated, since some of them will have gotten thanks, but some of them, depending on where it got mailed to, may not get it as
Right.
quickly.
Okay. All right, so we need a motion to approve the budget.
I'll make it. I'll make it.
I'll second.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the budget, raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Okay,
Jay, can I talk about iguanas real quick?
yeah, oh yeah, right. We should discuss that. Exactly. Go ahead.
So Alfredo is back on track. He came, this week's his second week. I think he's out there on Captiva today. And at the end of the month, he's going to turn in an invoice. Every month he'll have an invoice with a detailed summary of where he's getting the iguanas. He said some hot spots are like Merman, Bubble Room, Green Flash, that area. But when he comes out, he parks his truck and walks all over Captiva. He's been going to South Seas too. So last week, so he'll have give a good idea where he's getting most of the iguanas.
Okay, we had talked about at the last meeting that he was going to present a plan or something like that at today's meeting.
Yeah, no, he'll have, we'll have something at the next meeting.
Okay, yeah. I think there are a lot of questions that people had about, well, how does he go about, getting the iguanas? Is that is the way he's doing it the best way? So I think it'd be good to have an understanding in the panel of how he does hunt the iguanas.
Yeah.
And the way he does it the best way to do it.
Yeah. No, I think there was a conversation about, is there any other way other than shooting them or he snares them, So yeah, I think this is the best way. I mean, he went over when Miami was having a problem. he went over, they asked him to come over there and they looked into it, and this is the only way to do it. You know, you can't have traps out, you know, they sit in the traps and, this is it. This is it.
Small contraceptives won't work. Okay.
Hard putting them on.
Yeah. Would be helpful, John, if we could at some point, just have Alfredo do a map of where the hotspots are and where he goes, so that we on Captiva know generally what area he's covering. And if there's areas that are missing that he's not there, we can advise him. And that'll at least give us a sense of the plan.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep. All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, does anybody else have anything that they want to discuss before we adjourn the meeting?
Any comments from the audience also?
From the public, any
No.
public comment we haven't addressed?
We've covered all those.
Hey, I have one question. I've been trying to replace my recycling containers, and I know we send out a note with some contact information, but the telephone number doesn't work. And I went to the waste management site that used to be on, that is on Pine Ridge Road, but their office has been kind of obliterated. And so I've tried to call Lee County. I don't know. I'm really struggling to find out where to go here.
We had the two most important people on the call this morning that could have answered.
Yes. Bruce, are you looking for recycling or waste garbage? Recycling's through the county.
Yeah, but if you go on that, like I went on, you had a link and a number on there. Maybe you can try it. Maybe I was unable to get through. I don't know if anybody else has tried.
I'll reach out to Doug and see if I can connect you up with Doug, since he's the one who gave me the link.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah.
Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
See you all next month. Thank you.
Thanks,
you all.
Jay.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jay.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.